Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to this Wednesday, March 22, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees. At this time, we are opening to see if there are any comments about items on the closed session agenda. I see one attendee. If you would like to comment about any of the closed session agenda items, please raise your Zoom hand. Okay, seeing no one wanting to make a comment about the closed session items, we'll recess into closed session and plan to return to open session at 6 p.m. Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Sequoia Union High School District. We opened the meeting at 4 p.m., then recess to closed session. We now return to open session. We'll start with roll call.
Okay, our student trustees will be here soon. I'll start with Trustee Nori.
Here.
Trustee Koo.
Here.
Trustee Dubois.
Here.
Vice President Stevenson.
Here.
President Ginn.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Before approving the agenda, I have two change requests for the board from me. Number one, I'd like to move item 15.1 related to the superintendent's contract to be immediately after the report out from closed session and before the consent agenda. Number two, after consulting with our superintendent, I would like to pull our discussion item 14.1 relating to correspondence from the community. It was my decision to post a student's first letter as a discussion topic. I believe the topic of heterogeneous classes versus leveled classes is an important topic. It clearly has a lot of community interest. We have not discussed it as a board since I joined over 2 years ago, and I don't know when, if ever, our families had the opportunity to learn about this and provide feedback. Since our discussion would be referencing the letter, I thought the most transparent way to proceed was to post it and talk about it. We received feedback after this posting and decided to post another letter that also requested transparency from the board. The feedback has continued, and I no longer believe that this forum is the right way to address those letters. Regarding the student's first letter, when we discuss this matter, we want to hear from our professional staff, be presented with data to review, and also provide the community with the same opportunities. In regard to the second letter, I know that the superintendent has already sent an email on how our equity work will continue, and the board supports her in this effort. With that said, I move approval of the agenda with the two changes I just described and request a second.
I make a motion to approve your
I need a
suggested
second.
changes.
You second? Okay, so I made a motion, Carrie seconds. All in favor of approving the agenda with those revisions? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimously passes. With that said, there may be some of you who want to comment on the items that have been pulled. The public may comment about items not on the agenda during the public comment section of the agenda, which is for items that are not on the agenda. So if anyone did come here tonight to make comments about the items that have been pulled, you still have the opportunity to so comment. Okay, the next item on our agenda is report out on the closed session items. By a vote of 5 board members in favor, 0 against, the Board of Trustees approved the settlement agreement for case number 2022-2023-13. By a vote of 5 board members in favor, 0 against, the Board of Trustees approved the settlement agreement for case number 2022-2023-15. So the next item is 15.1, which we moved to be just after the report on the closed session items. The next agenda item addresses the board's open session discussion and possible approval of an employment agreement with Superintendent Candidate Crystal Leach regarding her employment as superintendent with the district. The proposed employment agreement also addresses all of the terms of her employment, as well as the effective date of the employment agreement. The proposed employment agreement contains the following material terms: term and work year. The term superintendent employment agreement with the district will be April 1, 2023 to March 31, 2027. Superintendent compensation and other terms of employment. Superintendent shall be paid beginning April 1, 2023, based upon an annualized salary of $291,979.25. Superintendent shall receive a master's stipend of $1,283. Upon receipt of a satisfactory evaluation at the end of the 2022-2023 school year, the superintendent will be eligible for a 2.5% merit-based step advancement increase on July 1, 2023. While serving in the position of Associate Superintendent Administrative Services, Ms. Leach shall also receive an Associate Superintendent Administrative Services stipend of $4,022.43 per fiscal month until the Associate Superintendent position is filled by the district or until June 30, 2023, whichever comes first. This Associate Superintendent stipend shall be prorated. The superintendent works for less than a full fiscal month in the position of Associate Superintendent Administrative Services. Number 5, superintendent shall receive a $100 per month expense allowance to cover transportation and travel expenses. Number 6, superintendent shall be eligible to participate in the district's health, dental, and vision benefits program on the same terms and conditions and subject to the same limitations as the district's management employees, as those benefit plans, providers, and other terms and conditions may change from time to time. Number 7, superintendent's terms of employment include the same work year and eligibility for sick leave, leave time, vacation, holidays, and district technology devices consistent with other full-time district classified management employees. Number 8, superintendent's terms of employment also include professional meetings/dues and leadership and equity coaching. This concludes the summary of the proposed superintendent employment agreement. A complete copy of the superintendent employment agreement is available from the district office upon request. At this point, I welcome any comments from the public about this agenda item. If anyone would like to make a public comment from in the room, there are comment cards on the table over there. You fill it out along with the item on which you wish to comment, and provide the comment card to Laura Loese. And if you are in the Zoom audience, you can raise your Zoom hand, and we will see the total number of commenters and then take public comment, if any. So if anyone has a comment, please raise your Zoom hand now or turn in your comment card now. Okay, seeing no comments. Okay. Seeing no comments, do I have a motion to approve the contract?
So moved.
We're going to discuss second.
So moved.
Oh, second.
I second.
Okay. Is there any discussion about this item?
This will be by roll call.
Or comments?
Oh, I can start first. I just wanted to congratulate Crystal Leach. And I think through this process, we as a board were able to align on what's important and what we were looking for in a superintendent. And we also heard feedback through the survey and through focus groups. And so coming out of this, I think we are stronger as a leadership team. And I have full confidence that Crystal Leach will get us to where we need to go. So congratulations.
Welcome aboard, Crystal. We're excited that you will, I guess not join, I don't know what other word to say. Stay, I don't know. Stay good, okay. I wish I could do something fancy, like combine some words or something, but my mind's not working. But congratulations. We're excited that you are on board. I know that for me and for all the comments that I've received from individuals in my constituent area, but also not in my constituent area, we're really concerned around equity and what that looks like and your commitment to continue to do that. Starting with continuing the work that you did when you put the Equity Council together during the interim superintendent the first time in response to a lot of the feedback we have gotten from the community, but also internally from our BIPOC staff and allies who really didn't feel like they had a voice internally, and that grassroots internal push was embraced by you. And I think it continues to be embraced by you. And so I'm happy about that. And your humility to learn and to have an equity coach and to really continue the work in ways that make sense for our district, for the way that we are designed. So I'm excited that you will be continuing that work.
Yeah, I can go next. So I've actually, got to work with Crystal for 9 months when I was a student trustee right after she became interim superintendent for the first time. And I'd also like to reiterate everything that both my colleagues said about her leadership. I mean, from the time when I was a student, I saw how much of a fierce fighter she was for all of our students of our district during probably one of the toughest time that our entire education system has ever faced. And I know she'll continue to do such great work. And I really look forward to all the great things that I know this board and this district's going to do over the next couple of years. And I don't think there's anyone else I'd rather have at the helm of it than Crystal Leach.
I want to say thank you for saying yes. Thank you for agreeing to work with us. I think that what I want to share is when I first joined this board, the board didn't really do retreats, and I'm really big into training, that we need lots of training as school board members, and that wasn't really the culture. And then we started to do retreats a little bit longer. Some were good, some were not so good. And the two strongest retreats that we have had as a governance team under this woman's leadership, we had two retreats in the last 2 months. Okay. They were all day. They were highly effective. We were joined by cabinet in the last retreat, and I learned a lot. So thank you. I think she knows what to bring to people, to bring us together and to get us working, like your tagline, together we go. And you did prove that you can bring people together during COVID, which was a terrible time to be a school board member, and for all of us in education, when 700 and 900 people were watching our meetings, she was able to bring people together. And that is the work that we have to do now, right? We need to bring people together. And I am absolutely confident that you are the person to work with us, to work with the community, to work with the staff, to work with our students. So thank you for saying yes.
So I just want to take this opportunity to elaborate a little bit on my quote that has been in the papers, and it was in the press release, that Crystal is the right person to lead this district now. We have several major items to address, including a facility construction project, moving forward with a new equity training partner, and deepening our connections with our feeder districts. Crystal has the connections within our community, the prior professional experiences, and the necessary skills to lead us through all of these, plus I know whatever else comes our way in the future. I'm very excited to have you in this position. With that, I call for a roll call vote.
Okay, I'll start with our student trustee who has arrived via Zoom. Student trustees Rodriguez Velasquez.
Yes.
Okay, she's on mute. Trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Koo,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
Vice President Stevenson,
Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I just. Motion carried.
Congratulations, Crystal. We're going to process
I have,
Oh,
you're
you wanna
skipping
talk
over
first.
me again.
after she finishes.
So thank you all. I just have something that I do want to share. Let's see if I can get through it without blubbering. Colleagues, staff, parents, and students. I am deeply honored and humbled to accept the position of Superintendent of the Sequoia Union High School District. I want to thank the Board of Trustees for entrusting me with this incredible responsibility and for their faith in my ability to lead our district forward. As I stand here today, I am acutely aware of the challenges that lie ahead of us, but I am also filled with a sense of optimism and excitement for the possibilities that await us. I'm committed to working tirelessly to ensure that every student in our district has access to a high-quality education that prepares them for success in the 21st century. To achieve this, we must work together as a team. We must collaborate with teachers, staff, parents, and community members to create a culture of excellence that fosters academic achievement, innovation, and lifelong learning. We must be proactive in identifying and addressing the unique needs of our students and provide them with the resources and support they need to succeed. I am also committed to fostering a positive and inclusive school environment where all students feel valued, respected, and safe. We must work to build strong relationships with our students and their families and to promote a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to reiterate my sincere gratitude for this opportunity. I look forward to working with each of you and to build a better future for our students and in our community. Thank you again for this opportunity of service.
Now we'll take the 5-minute break. Okay, we're returning from our brief recess and moving to approval of the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items that they would like to pull? Like I said, are there any public comments related to the consent agenda? Anyone from the Zoom audience like to make a public comment about the consent agenda? Please raise your Zoom hand now.
I've received no cards.
Okay, does any board member have any item that they'd like to pull from the consent agenda? You want to pull number 7.4? Okay, so we're pulling item 7.4. Does any board member want to pull any other item? Okay, with that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda absent item 7.4?
I move to approve the consent agenda with the items that were removed.
Thank you. A second?
I second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez,
Yes.
trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois, vice president Stevenson,
Yes.
president Ginn.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, it is our practice to act on items pulled from the consent agenda immediately following the consent agenda vote. You pulled item 7.4. Would you like to talk about
Yeah,
it?
I just wanted to make a comment about teacher sabbaticals. I wanted to say thank you for approving the 6 sabbaticals. I read them all with interest. I think it's the best thing we can do for teachers and other staff members to send them on sabbaticals. And the things that our teachers are doing really excited me. It's going to bring back just a lot of information, a lot of power, and our teachers work so hard. They're overworked. And I know they're very stressed. So I just wanted to say again, how much I believe in sabbaticals, and I would even like to do more. So thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to also say as a new trustee, I read all the sabbatical applications with a lot of interest, and I know some of the folks offered to come back and report back on their projects, and I would encourage them to do that. I think it would be really great to see the results, the fruits of their labor, and how it's going to make an impact on the district.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that too. All the reports look great, and I really look forward to hearing all of them come back and share what they learned and how it can impact our district.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve item 7.4, approval of sabbatical leave for the 2023-2024 school year?
So moved.
Second,
Yes. Trustee Nori,
yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
vice president Stevenson,
Yes.
president Gann.
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you. Next on our agenda is special recognitions.
Special recognition. So tonight, we will be recognizing Woodside High School teacher Amanda Olson and career technical education programs, culinary arts, foods and nutrition, and student leaders. So helping us with this recognition will be Principal Van Putten.
Thank you, Superintendent Leach and Board of Trustees. They say that food brings people together. Everybody in the audience, yes or no? So we did bring some food to share. We are breaking bread. We are going to share our brownies. But this particular group of students, under the leadership of Miss Amanda Olson, they have actually really brought some joy and satisfied tummies to our campus and to our community. And I think oftentimes people think of foods or, a cooking class as, oh, a fun elective. It is that, but it's actually an amazing tool and skill that these kids, many tools and skills that they're walking away from and walking away with into their post-secondary careers. So I'd like to recognize the following students for their continued leadership and professionalism in catering multiple school events this year, on campus, off campus, private homes. They have been articulate, professional, joyful, nervous at times, but so proud when they start talking food and presenting. All of a sudden, there's like a whole nother light to them. They have been volunteering their time outside of class for events and pathway promotion, and they are motivated to pursue careers in the culinary arts and hospitality industry. And I'm really, really proud of them and excited that they finally get a little bit of time in the spotlight. So the following students, and if they're absent, we will make sure that they get their certificate, but come on forward. Miku Sato, Sophia Cambrone, Annabelle Bechtel, Dalga Villamer, Valerie Corral, Grace Ricketts, and Remy Guzman Guerra, and Miss Amanda Olson.
Hey, Karen, can you slow down and say what their names are again? Okay.
We'll do this. Miku.
Ready? On three. 1, 2, 3. Brownies. Thank you.
I definitely think that we should recognize culinary arts throughout the district if we are going to be blessed with food.
Okay, the next item is Board of Trustees, Superintendent comments and committee reports. Shanice, we'll start with Shanice and rotate around.
Okay. Thank you all for coming out, and the lovely brownies, really appreciate it. I wanted to share that I've been in the community quite a bit, and recently worked with Redwood City together to make sure they got the LCAP. They were asking about our LCAP. So I think the more that we can share it with some of our partners out in the community, they really want to partner around the LCAP, not necessarily just to be involved in it, but like, because they're doing after school programs, they're doing all these different things. So I just think that's probably a lot of our partners are wanting how to support us. And so I thought that was a really great conversation.
For those of you who receive recognitions, you're welcome to stay as long as you want, but should you wish to leave, you're also welcome to do that, whatever is best for you, just so I let you know.
Also, I went to the CSBA Legislative Day, and I specifically talked with Mark Berman, with the rest of the Board of Trustees around the peninsula, and Diane Pappin. It was a really good conversation to be in the room with other colleagues, talking about the things that are impacting our budget, to talk about ways to support our schools, and supporting some of the CSBA initiatives. So I was really excited. I think advocacy is one of our most important tools as we think about some of the hidden cost of running a district, working with students who have more costly needs, and not that we don't pay those costs, but we also want to get reimbursement for those costs. So that was really inspiring for me to kind of remember about the public school system and the support that we need. I wanted to say I had a number of conversations with the community around our learning needs, some of the information around detracking and LCAP and so many other things that people are really concerned. I think I took away, and some of them were within my constituent area, but also outside of it, and just really how our community deeply cares about the kids and the students and scholars in our school. And so that's been like resonating with me. And then want to talk about Dreamers Unite. Sequoia High School really turned out Dreamers Unite, and the students led the workshops, and presented. They brought an alumni team back to talk about what is it like to go to school when you're undocumented, or a person who doesn't have papers in this country, and just kind of the barriers as well as ways to navigate that. I thought it was actually very powerful in telling what worked for our district, what are the bright spots of what's working for our district. So I was very excited for the young people who did that, from mental health workshops to how to apply for financial aid to many other topics. And so I look forward to attending OYA this weekend, and maybe the women's conference that some other folks are doing around young women and inspiration as it for Women's Month. And then the last thing is just looking forward to our, as we come out of our board retreat and going into our third retreat. We've been retreating a lot. And so I'm just like, I'm ready to get it down on paper and get to work, y'all. So just really looking at community engagement. I know our school works really hard to get community engagement, but yet it still is an area of growth for us and opportunity. And so really want to dig in that because I do think it's a new day and people voices need to be at the table from all different communities, the 8 districts, and that feed into us or partner with us. But also some of the areas I'm concerned about, which is like, what is equity? Is that my phone? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was mine. But also defining equity and what it means to this district, because I know a lot of our feeder districts are also doing their own plan or have their own definition. I'm looking at Amy, who came from Belmont Redwood Shores, but I know Ravenswood is. So many schools are, so many areas in our county are dealing with that. So just want to make sure we have a grounding on that and really thinking about academic success for all. So yeah, and welcome again, Crystal. So those are the comments I wanted to make today.
Yeah, so I'm happy to go next. First of all, I've also been out and about the community. I'd like to thanks to Trustee Dubois, is actually able to go speak to a group of young men who are mainly juniors at Sequoia and Carlmont and share with them a little bit about what it's like to be involved in your local community and the importance of local government. So, that was really fun to talk to some of our students and tell them about my experience and also what opportunities that are available for them in our local community to continue to be involved. And like Trustee Stevenson, I was also able to have a lot of conversations. A lot of them were tough conversations with people across our district, both in Area D, both being teachers, parents, students, and trustees in other elementary school districts that feed into us about some of the issues that our districts face. And, I think what I really came to appreciate from all those conversations, and one thing, I said even when I wanted to run for this seat, was how much I really appreciate how deeply involved our community is in public education. I actually came from when I was in middle school, we actually moved from Fremont, and I was shocked right away when I got here how deeply all of us are invested in the success of all our students. And I think when we have that, it's just kind of coming together and finding alignment. I think we're really on the verge of being able to do great things to really improve the academic outcomes for all of our students. And I really look forward to having more conversations about how to best go about doing that.
All right. So just like Trustee Stevenson, I also participated in the CSBA Legislative Action Week. And that used to be a single day trip to Sacramento, but due to the pandemic, it switched to virtual. And they decided that was actually a good thing because it brought out so many more people than that. Like I never used to go because I have to work. I can't take a whole day off to go to Sacramento, but I could take half an hour here, half an hour there. Is much easier. So I had a chance to speak with State Senator Becker because there were actually 3 of us. So due to Brown Act, you can only have 2 people from one district participating in each of these meetings. So I had a chance to participate in the meeting with State Senator Becker. And the other good thing about it being virtual is each legislator has a field representative as well as a representative in Sacramento. So both of them were on the call as well. And these are people that are focused on education on behalf of that legislator. So it was great to be able to talk to them about fully funding our schools. I specifically spoke up about the one bill called AB 1023 that's sponsored by Assembly Member Poppin, and that relates to increased cybersecurity support for school districts. So I think that is definitely something everyone is keeping an eye on as folks are trying to hack into our systems, and we have a lot of sensitive data in our student and staff information records. So I think that is something very important, and it was a pleasure being able to speak to the legislator and their aides about it. And actually, I wanted to thank Senator Becker as well, because he was initially not supposed to come. And somehow he managed to show up for a few minutes, spoke with us, and then continued to listen in as he was going to his next meeting. So that shows to us how important education is to him, and appreciate him squeezing us in between two meetings at the Capitol. So that was great. I also wanted to share that I had a chance to see Fanny. That was a production at the Lucy Stern Theater. And, you know, I never had heard about Fannie Lou Hamer. And I realize now that she was such an instrumental figure in fighting for Black voter rights in Mississippi in the 60s. And I had never heard of this. And so it reminds me that our history books don't always tell all the perspectives that are happening at that time. And it's taught through a certain lens. Highly encourage, if you haven't seen that production, it's open through April 2nd. So go see it if you get a chance. And then lastly, I was glad that the sun peaked out today, because that bomb cyclone just came from nowhere, and there were trees down and branches everywhere. Really appreciate our superintendent, as well as all of the facilities folks, for scrambling and doing what they could to keep students and staff safe at our different schools. And I understand that Menlo Atherton had to close due to power outages, but you know, I really appreciate and recognize all the work that the facilities crew is doing to try and keep things up as much as possible. And that's it.
Okay. So I've also been out in the community quite a bit. One of my favorite things was seeing Woodside's production of Cinderella. I was the first person out of my seat to give a standing ovation. I loved it. My husband's tired of seeing Cinderella with me, so I took a friend and she enjoyed it as much as I did. Also wanted to say I was not at the legislative meeting for CSBA, but I did attend Mark Berman's education meeting with other trustees from around the peninsula. And he brought up two bills that he's sponsoring, AB 105, which is a computer science requirement, and AB 873, which is a media literacy requirement. And I think our feedback to him was, we don't like unfunded mandates. My specific feedback was, please talk to teachers. We keep putting more and more on their plates, and we don't take anything off. Please talk to teachers before you have these great ideas. I also gave him my feedback, which my colleagues have heard about. There's in ed code, you know, we cannot ever hire somebody, or can't hire somebody easily, who has been convicted of a felony. And there are times where people, when they're very young, may have a substance abuse problem and may get into trouble with the law. And there are times when people, you know, have been clean and sober for decades, and there's still a hiring problem. I am troubled by this, because I really believe that if somebody has overcome addiction, it should be a badge of honor. We should actually know about it, and we should praise them. So I brought this up, and my colleagues have heard me talk about it. And I'm so passionate about this. I really would like to do more about this, because I feel we have a substance abuse issue in our country, and it should not be a stigma. Rich and I were at the Redwood City Together meeting, and that was exciting. Raphael has done an incredible job raising money. He's way over budget, like 100 and, do you remember how much? It was like 120% over budget, lots of partnerships. One of the things that we've been working with him on is we'd love to have a stronger partnership with our high schools. And I know he's going to be having a conversation with our Principal Ogden at Redwood, and that could be exciting. I hope that turns into something. Amy and I both received a letter from former school board member in the San Mateo Union High School District. He's very involved in Rotary. And in his letter, he says that he believes that our district is not exchange program friendly. So I think I have passed that letter on to our superintendent, and that might be something that we want to think about, because I am a big believer in exchange programs. I think travel is so important. And the other very exciting meeting I was part of, Principal Sean Priest invited me to Sequoia High School to be a part of what's called the Chapin Hill or Chapin Hall project. And what this is, it's sort of a pilot with a researcher, youth development experts, as well as nonprofits like Life Moves and others. And it's a way of identifying at-risk kids that might not be on the radar of the staff. And then working with Life Moves to get families into housing. A very exciting part of this is that it teaches kids to advocate for themselves. And this is new for Life Moves. Usually they just work with the parents, and now they're working with students. And there's a lot of other very, very exciting components to this project. So it seemed to me like a best practice. I was very honored to be part of the conversation. I learned a lot. So thanks.
Hey, I've got a couple committee reports. Carrie mentioned that she and I attended the Redwood City Together. For those who don't know, Redwood City Together advances the success of youth and families through community collaboration. We heard a presentation from a group working on early childhood education, and their focus was really on recruitment, talking about trouble finding early childhood educators, and they had a program for trying to get people into that career path. And then the discussion went more broadly into workforce development for other organizations that were there. The Redwood City School District shared some of their efforts to get new teachers in. And one announcement for those of you who are interested, April 6th from 5 to 8 p.m. There is the SV2 Community Night celebrating CCCS, which stands for Community Collaboration for Children's Success. That's a Redwood City Together event with its partners. If any of you are interested in attending, that's coming up. Next, I attended the LCAP Community Engagement event in East Palo Alto last week. I want to recognize and thank our superintendent and cabinet, along with the principals who were in attendance for their efforts to engage with the East Palo Alto community. And lastly, I participated in the Legislative Action Week along with Amy and Shawnice, and found that to be a useful way for us to start engagement with our local legislators. I think it was nice of CSB to put it on, and I think all of us that participated found it useful. And for those of you who didn't get a chance, maybe next year you might consider it. Okay, next up is Crystal Leach.
Gonna skip me again. So on the brief recess that we took, Edith and I were counting how many trees that we have lost at Sequoia this year. So then I was doing a quick tally of the trees that we have lost across the district since January, and we are now currently, oh, I forgot these two out there. So we're at 14. And these are not small trees. These are large trees, some of the remnants of the giant redwood that fell in a previous storm over there. And so going back off of kind of piggybacking off of what Trustee Koo said, just an abundance of thank you to our entire facility staff. Often when we get these storms, they are working well into the night. Some of them are even staying the night here. And working with tree removals and, dealing with the creek behind Redwood. So the team is exceptionally large, and it also goes down to the site staff. So the custodians, the plant managers, and the grounds crew at each and every site that make sure that the site is cleaned up and safe for students to return the next day. So I'm getting a little twitchy. I wonder if I still live in California, with this weather that's happening as we have more storms approaching next year. We are saving a little bit of money on trees though, because we were going to remove some of them. So, and we've been pretty lucky so far as far as damage goes. So I just wanted to thank our facilities department and all of our site facility, custodian, and grounds staff.
Okay, before we go to the student trustee comments, I'm just gonna make an announcement. I've seen that there have been some changes to the people who are in the room as well as people who are on Zoom, that we pulled item 14, the discussion item. So if anybody who wants to make a comment about items that are not on the agenda can do it as part of the public comment. So So next up is student trustee comments.
Can you all hear me all right? Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Okay, we'll circle back to the student trustees. And after we hear from the Sequoia District Teachers Association, followed by American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees.
Good evening. I listened intently to all of your presentations of the work that you've been doing. And I was glad to hear that the trustees have been sharpening their lobbying skills, because we are aware that California has its first anti-trans student bill in committee in Sacramento. And I would hope that our trustees would join with our educators in impressing upon our legislators how much that bill cannot pass, how important it is that trans students have school as a safe place where they can be themselves authentically without fear. I also want to thank the board, especially President Ginn, for the humility in recognizing the harm potentially caused by the discussion item originally on the agenda and changing path. I'm confident that within our new superintendent, our district staff, and with teachers, we will build evaluation protocols, feedback vehicles, feedback loops to ensure that we are serving students the best possible education and making that challenging and rewarding for all students. Later in the agenda, we're going to talk about bargaining. We're looking forward to setting bargaining dates and moving forward on that with the district. And we wanted to congratulate Superintendent Leach and point out that while the bond that she worked tirelessly to pass has a number of green elements to it, we are distressed that I believe 14 trees is the most that any superintendent has lost. So we will be watching. Thank you.
Okay, is there a representative from AFSCME wishing to make a comment? Okay, so we're going to circle back to the student trustee comments.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. And sorry I couldn't join you. I wanted to make sure I made it in time for my comments today, so I figured I'd hop on Zoom. And happy Women's History Month, even though it's kind of the home stretch. I didn't get to say that last meeting. So I just want to say thank you to all of our women out there, our mothers, our Black women, our women of color, and our queer women for being the strength that glues our community together. So a little update on students. Seniors are finally receiving their college decisions, including myself, and many come out at least in the next week or so. Most of the UCs are out. And it's been, I know Bonnie asked me about this last meeting. It's been quite competitive this year, and I know I've been hearing a lot of, wait lists and rejections, and I wanted to remind our students and our parents that these decisions aren't a reflection of what our students have worked so hard for in these past 4 years. It really is a lottery, and it's a tough process. And it is what it is, and we all kind of, our door opens. So I just wanted to put that out there. And like everyone's been mentioning recently, we've had some pretty rough outages. This is like maybe my second or third week in a row where Kenyatta's been out for 2 days or more in the week. So I've just been at home going through my college classes. But, we're thinking, Avantika and I, that this is definitely a part of kind of future safety plans as well, having kind of making some preventative measures for potential trees falling on buildings or, power going out during school. Because I know especially for the comprehensive sites, it's quite a challenge to kind of get students on and off campus if the power just goes out randomly. So I think development of, plans and policies would be helpful for our community and our families. And I know that some students have also been struggling with, turning in assignments and making sure that they're getting credit for missing assignments due to power outages, which is unfortunate. And of course, up to the discretion of, the teacher, the school, whatever it may be. But I'm hoping that we can be a little bit, sensitive with one another when it comes to things like that. Yeah, and I can imagine in the coming years that, California weather is going to change a lot. So it's really imperative that we kind of work on these preventative measures before, the absolute worst of this climate change kind of hits us. And again, relating to discussions today, congratulations to Superintendent Leach. I'm clapping and you can't hear, but I just wanted to briefly express my hopes and my expectations that our new superintendent will be engaged with students on the social and academic level. And I can imagine that the community has similar expectations. And I hope that the board in the future will kind of grow into supporting initiatives that truly and accurately reflect the heart of our community and really take on a diverse worldview. Other than that, I hope that everyone has a relaxing and fun spring break before we head into the home stretch of this school year. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those comments. Okay, the next item is for public comment for items not on the agenda. So if anybody wants to comment about an item that is not on the agenda, which includes the former discussion item number 14.1, this is your opportunity to comment about items not on the agenda. So if we could see a show of hands in the Zoom audience, how many there are? And I'll ask Laura how many we have in the live audience wishing to make a comment on this. How many?
We have 4 live. And I'm sorry, we have 4 in person
And
and
two
2
at the
right now
moment.
online.
Let's give it another few moments. If anybody in the Zoom audience wants to comment about any item not on our agenda, which includes the former discussion item 14.1, now is your opportunity to comment about any item not on our agenda. It's requested I clarify that item 14.1 was a discussion of correspondence received from SUHSD staff and community. We have removed that as a discussion item. So if anyone wants to comment about it, you would comment during this public comment section for items that are not on the agenda. Okay, so we have 7 total comments. So our board policy says that we do 3 minutes, but not more than 10 without a board approval to go longer. I would propose that we give each speaker 3 minutes and go 21 minutes, but I want to see if I'm seeing nodding heads. Okay, so Laura, if you can fix the list of all of the people who currently have their hand raised and whose cards are in, we'll take those public comments. Each commenter, for those who are live in the live audience, there will be a countdown on the screen that, well, there's several of them in the room. There's one that you'll see right in front of you when you're at the podium. You have 3 minutes. When that gets to 0, your time for public comment has ended. For those of you who are in Zoom, while you are speaking, there will be a countdown timer. Laura Loese will lead us through public comment, and each person will have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Leanne Stroop.
Thank you for granting time for public comment on the anonymous letter sent by Students First, which objects to what they term detracking. Last fall, members of MA's English department were called to address the board regarding multicultural literature and voice, our newly instituted heterogeneous freshman English class. At the time, we had virtually no data to offer other than results of student surveys and grade distribution. Even now, I can offer only anecdotal evidence drawn from the performance of the cohort of 10th graders currently enrolled in AS English 2. Having taught AS English 2 more times than any other course in my 28 years at MA, I can say with confidence that the students in this year's honors sections are performing at the same level as students who previously began their high school careers in AS English 1. I will acknowledge that the first few weeks of fall semester were challenging as we asked students to perform some unfamiliar tasks, but after the initial adjustment period, students are meeting our expectations. That said, one of the most important goals of MCLV to make honors and AP courses more accessible and attractive to all students has yet to be achieved. My 3 AS English 2 classes are still strikingly homogeneous. Almost all of my students attended Hillview or La Entrada middle schools. Out of 79 students, only 5 came from Ravenswood. As many scholars have pointed out, the chief determinant of academic success, if we measure that by matriculation in the most selective colleges, is tied to income level and zip code. In my long career as a teacher and department chair, nothing has frustrated me more than our inability to move the needle in this regard. Ideally, 9th graders who begin their high school career in heterogeneous classes with peers from all of our feeder schools would feel confident about enrolling in the honors track. The English department at MA is working hard to make that change a reality. MCLV teachers implemented new strategies and assignments this year to prepare their students for honors level work. And over the last few weeks, AS English 2 teachers visited every single section of MCLV to make a personal pitch to encourage students to enroll. In the fall, I begged the board to be patient, to let our department work through any kinks in implementing MCLV and to gain a longitudinal perspective on its efficacy. Yet here we are, a few months later, with a call to reinstitute AS English 1 for next fall. Not only would that change be virtually impossible, it would also be unjust. May I continue briefly? It would also be unjust and unfair.
I meant just to finish the one sentence of thought. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Superintendent Gina Sudaria from Ravenswood.
Good evening, trustees. Congratulations, Superintendent Leach. Crystal, I want to thank you for making yourself available to chat as soon as I learned about the letter being agendized. I appreciate your time and transparency.
Gina, can you speak up just a little bit?
Publicly, I would like to make a comment regarding the letter written by Sequoia Union High School District students first. Regardless of the context as to why this letter was written anonymously, advocating for the board to revert their decision to stop detracking, I am present here tonight to be the face and voice of our students of Ravenswood. When there is absence of representation and voice, then folks share a narrative of our story that is incorrect, and we are not able to advocate for policies that disrupt inequities. I'm present tonight for it to be known and for it to be clear that we want to commend and applaud Sequoia Union High School District, specifically Menlo Atherton, for its recent policy to detract and make sure that all students have equal access to courses in the 9th and 10th grade. I'm here tonight to represent Ravenswood's instructional leadership team who do not want this board to revert back to practices that would reinstate systemic barriers that are often divided by racial lines, leaving our children of color behind. Whoever wrote the letter made it explicitly clear that they want their kids to stand out in a highly competitive system among university crowd. We get it. But between the lines, it was read that they do not want their kids to be mixed with Ravenswood children. Additionally, I'm here because our data was misrepresented. It does not tell the whole story of our children. The letter only reinforces the same message that continues to perpetuate a narrative about Ravenswood that is only based on one data point. Our children are more than one data point, and their potential should not be dictated and limited by it. This one data point does not take into account the nuances that our teachers are making in the classroom. that take place in our heterogeneous classrooms, the exponential growth. It does not take into account the exponential growth our children are making toward proficiency. They did not share the data about how students who are on grade level continue to make their typical annual growth and even stretch growth, which refutes the notion that their honors students would not be prepared, or perhaps might even regress if sitting next to another student who's not at their same performance level. The Koyuna High School District Board, Superintendent Leach and team, Ravenswood is cheering you on and applaud this district and the staff for embracing policies around detracking. We encourage you not to look back nor be pulled back to practices and policies that are proven to harm students who have been historically marginalized. I am here to reinforce that Ravenswood wants to continue to work with Sequoia Union High School District as a value-added resource to make the work that we've done together, work collaboratively, proactively, to move forward the equity work we have embarked on together and to dismantle the status quo. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Abby Corman.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and community. My name's Abby Corman. I've taught in this district for 10 years. I'm a resident without electricity right up the road and charging over in the corner over there. And I'm a voter and organizer of passionate folks. For me recently, I've just attended the CTA Equity and Human Rights Conference this past weekend and been inspired by the work being done in our state by passionate educators working for our youth. And I left believing that together we can move forward in this moment and achieve win-win solutions for all stakeholders if we work with each other, listen to each other, and agree on changes to propel our district forward toward a more equitable and just education system. I have to admit I'm confused by our agenda today and our agenda processes in general. During Alan Sarver's tenure as president, during the pandemic, I remember him having a board correspondence agenda item at each board meeting, or at least sharing out what the board had received through email. I have prepared comments for both 14.1 and public comment, and folks prepared their time tonight around the original agenda, but apparently we cannot speak to them both, or we've had to edit our timing based on the decision this morning. I'm wondering, are we moving toward hearing board correspondence again? I've learned in therapy and other work that impact matters more than intention. It appears like board members may have their own agenda they're pushing by highlighting some letters they've received over others. I have to admit, I was aghast that one letter out of the, I imagine, hundreds you received, since I write so many, were able to come onto the agenda so readily and easily within 2 days. This school year, we've not heard once from Students First, even in public comment, because I've been listening. I hope you're more mindful as we move forward about how every action you take shares your values more than any statement or comment that you make. And for my last 43 seconds, I'd like to reiterate what we heard the superintendent from Ravenswood District say, that we all, many of your community members, commend and applaud SUHD for its policy to detract. We are all for removing systemic barriers that leave our children of color behind. And we need to be mindful we're not perpetuating a narrative about Ravenswood children or any of our students, because our children are more than one data point. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker in person is Chris Thompson.
I hope. But heartfelt. We wish you well, Crystal. As a former board member, you may remember that I have a passion about research literature on education. And I'm grateful to the Stanford context and where I can take advantage of access to that literature. In my brief comments here, I want to share what I think one can reasonably conclude from the research on detracking. There's surprisingly large literature on tracking and detracking, from which I've drawn two conclusions I want to share with you. First, tracking, not detracking, is not good educational practice. 10 years ago, William Mathis at the University of Colorado drew the same conclusion, writing that, quote, an expansive body of literature conclusively shows tracking has been harmful, inequitable, and an unsupportable practice. He was not the first to reach this conclusion, nor is he the last. Making the same point, I want to recommend to you a paper by Pedro Noguera, who is well known to members of this board as being an education leader. He wrote with a co-author that tracking serves to perpetuate and reinforce educational inequities along race and class lines. In most schools, placement in designated tracks corresponds strikingly with race and class privilege. Upper tracks have disproportionate number of students from affluent backgrounds, while the lower tracks are filled with poor and economically disadvantaged students. Interestingly, in the thrust of Noguera's articles is even more relevant to the second point I want to make from the research literature, and that is that we should not be asking whether to detract, but instead how we implement this instructional change. If there is mixed conclusions on detracking in the research, which there is admittedly, it has more to do with the results of the differences of the challenges of implementation. Here, I would recommend an article to you, and I'd be happy to provide a list and the articles to any of the board that wants to take a look. A piece from Beth Rubin. She writes, my work in detracking schools leads me to conclude that the most successful instances of detracking combine deep structural reform with thoughtful pedagogical change and are undergirded by an engagement with students and teachers' beliefs around notions of ability and achievement. When these facets converge, the positive results for students are startling. I'll repeat, when these facets converge in detract environments, the positive results for students are startling. In conclusion, 13 seconds, I think it's valuable for the board to examine the implementation of detracking. On the other hand, I believe it is well understood from peer-reviewed research that returning to tracking would represent a fundamental failure in meeting the educational needs of all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. To the chair, we've had 2 more hands raised since our last count. Three more hands raised since our last count. 4, or did one more go up? Oh, 4. Can you speak in the microphone?
So sorry, we're discussing, there's 4 additional people or 5 additional people who have raised their hands. At some point, we have to draw a line, and we're discussing whether the people who have raised their hands later will get the same 3 minutes or will get some other number of minutes. Since we're well past our 10 minutes of public comment, whether we would do 3 full minutes, 2 minutes, minute and a half, or what we would do for the additional commenters. We'll try to make this not take too long. Shanice, what's your opinion?
I want to take into consideration that some people were planning their time around certain items, and so they have come in. I wonder if we can just say right now, like, this is the last group, something like that, because I think people are planning their time differently. I'm looking at Carrie.
Are you proposing three full minutes for the additionals? 3 full minutes for the additionals is what you're proposing? 2, you're proposing 2.
Cut it down.
Carrie's saying 3.
I would rather do the full 3 minutes for you.
Topic. Amy,
Carrie, do you think 3?
Amy.
You think it would be more appropriate? I can do 3.
Yeah, I'm in support of 3.
Okay,
because we did
3 minutes apiece for the remainders and no more hands after the ones. If you could get a list of who all has raised their hand and not made a comment, and we will take these comments and that'll conclude the public comment.
Okay, so we will end after Paige Winkoff. Okay, our first speaker on Zoom is Chris Robel. Mr. Robel, can you hear us? You'll need to unmute.
We want to move on to the next person.
Okay, we will come back to you, Mr. Robel. Our next speaker is Heather Oh, did he just? Are you there, Mr. Robel? Okay, our next speaker is Heather Hopkins.
Good evening, board. I'm a Woodside High School parent and a trustee of the Los Lumitas Elementary School District, which is one of your feeder districts. As a community member, I wanted to let you know that the board's decision-making and communications process over the last several months has felt very destabilizing. On Friday, in the wake of the most recent major leadership decision that rocked the community, it was kind of alarming to find the last-minute addition of the critical conversation of detracking put onto the agenda. Moving forward, I hope that President Ginn and the board will actively rebuild trust with the community by proceeding more thoughtfully. In my opinion, a well-governed board transparently forecasts discussions and initiatives to the greatest extent possible. Last night and again this afternoon, I emailed the board a letter signed by 116 community members, most of whom are teachers and other district staff, but also represents local school board trustees and former trustees, parents, and staff from the Stanford Graduate School of Education. And since I last checked an hour ago, 8 more people have added their names. Basically, the response was fast and furious, indicating intense staff and community concern that the majority of the board will act on a desire that some trustees have telegraphed to us over the last several months, which is to reverse the detracking initiative. When this discussion does come back to the board, we hope it's done with plenty of notice and with the good governance to recognize that this is a programmatic decision and that it should be made based on the recommendation of our experts, our district leadership and staff. Speaking of district leadership and staff, I'd like to welcome Superintendent Leach into the role officially. Thank you.
Thank you. So Chris is back. We'll open the floor to him. Chris Robel.
I'm sorry about that earlier. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Chris Robel. Yes, 2 unrelated topics. First of all, I would strongly encourage the board to stagger its timing of these board meetings so that it's not at exactly the same time and day as the Redwood City School District board meetings. They're roughly every 2 weeks, and they're both at Wednesdays at 7 p.m. every 2 weeks. So there's got to be some other day of the week, maybe the other Wednesday when the other district isn't happening. So please consider that. There's a whole set of issues around that I have concerns around regarding lack of transparency. Anyway, I'll stop there. So please reconsider your the timing of the meetings. The second issue with respect to school bonds. And by the way, I want to reinforce what Trustee Du Bois said. Talk to teachers, right? They know probably what's better needed for the classrooms than anybody else, right? I trust teachers. And similarly with Shanice, I applaud her for talking to Mark Berman. I also spoke with Mark Berman and also Jerry Hill several months ago regarding these school bonds, right? 97% of these school bonds come from developers. So this is a pay to play. They fund the program to tell us how great these school bonds are. And then of course we pay for them in terms of higher costs for the contracts that they get awarded. And you know, of course, I'm thinking somewhat cynically that we should redirect those towards underground utilities for PG&E. But anyway, I seriously think that these school bonds, roughly one out of every $3 currently goes every $3 that the taxpayers pay, only 33 cents goes to the school districts because of interest rates that are so high. And I'm a former CFO, so I'm telling you, this is not a good way to spend money with school bonds. And secondly, more importantly, it can't be used for things inside the walls of the classroom. And I've talked to a lot of teachers, and it's what they need is not more buildings, especially when enrollment's declining. What they need is aids and smaller classrooms and academic programs and things that are actually going to effectuate better student outcomes. So please, and again, Shanice talked to Mark Berman and others, and I have as well, and I know there's a lot of problems with this. The threshold for approval on a school bond and a parcel tax should be the same percent. Otherwise, you get strange incentives where people are going for school bonds when they should be going for parcel taxes, because a parcel tax can be used for anything, right? And Mayor G, anyway, I won't go into that, but acknowledge the problem there, and people go for school bonds even though that's a waste of money.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carol Ann Coleman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone, the beautiful board members. Love seeing your beautiful faces. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Thank you so much. So my name is Carol Ann Coleman. I'm a teacher at Sequoia High School. I'm also a community member in Redwood City, and I'm also a parent of a Sequoia High School student. I wanted to congratulate Ms. Leach for her new position. I love how you welcome the room and your approachability and your open mind. Lots of words I wrote down on my Post-it is the workplace, teamwork, equity work. Every action needs to be intentional, hopeful, grateful. A lot of credibility in the room. And I'm really glad to see everyone is taking their time to speak out. I think we all want positive results. We also want transparency. About the 14.1, the school I work at has been detracking for a very long time. I've been working in the biology, the science department for 7 years, and everyone's welcome in biology, and we have a mixed group of students, all different learning styles, all different ethnicities, all different cultures. And since I've been working in the biology area, I would say every student except maybe less than 1% have been able to access the material and go on to physics or chemistry the following year. The current program I'm in right now is all about access, equitable practices, and understanding that all of us have internalized biases that we need to explore every day. I said it, every day, not just at a training and not just with certain people. Let's see. I've got one more Post-it, but I don't know if I have time to say it. We all commend, we all applaud. We do want to remove systemic racism. We don't want to perpetuate inequities. And I am concerned about the quick response to the letter, because I've never seen that happen so quickly. Have a wonderful evening, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Caroline. Our next speaker is under parent, and you're welcome to introduce yourself if you like.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I'm actually remaining anonymous, and I want to explain why. Retaliation is a real concern from students and parents. Many people do not feel commenting at the board is a safe space because how many of us, including students, were treated when we spoke up during the pandemic. So I am choosing under the Brown Act to remain anonymous. And I just want to let you know why. Again, there's a real concern about being retaliated against or being demonized, as many of us were during the pandemic. So I just wanted to explain that first. So congratulations, Crystal. We're really looking forward to your inclusive and experienced leadership at the helm of our district. I want to really highlight the mission of Sequoia Union High School District, which is to engage and prepare all students to excel in a global society. This is an excellent mission and really a guiding light for all policies in our district. The freedom to choose is a fundamental aspect of our democracy. Providing choice to students affirms our democratic values. Removing barriers to rigorous classes is key to successful education. Providing academic supports for students who are not prepared for rigorous academics is incredibly important. Supporting STEM initiatives and other rigorous initiatives will help us compete in a global economy. Ensuring that we have standard-based grading policies is excellent to, again, improve student outcomes and their education, as well as partnering with feeder schools. I want to highlight Sequoia High School has been very successful in providing choices in various tracks through the ICAP and IB courses. Teachers and administrators have done an outstanding job of increasing every year for the last 10 years, the number of students of color in those rigorous classes, in the ICAP and the IB classes. They've done an incredible job of marketing the ICAP and IB program, and their best practices at Sequoia High School should really be looked at. The data is there. They are currently tracking and removing barriers and supporting students, and it is working, and they are supporting our incredible Sequoia Union High School District mission. I am very concerned about the lack of transparency with the entire detracking process.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Jenny Vargas Blum.
Hello, thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I signed on right after a work meeting, so that is why I was not able to raise my hand earlier. I'm going to start with this quote because I didn't think I was going to start with this quote, but I heard someone speak right before me, so I feel like I need to start with this quote. It is a quote from David W. Orr, who is an ecological literacy, educating our children for a sustainable world. It's a quote from this book, and it hangs in my office. And I stood up and grabbed this quote so I could read it right now, based on what I heard. The plain fact is that the planet does not need more successful people, but it does desperately need more peacemakers, healers, restorers, storytellers, and lovers of every kind. It needs people who live well in their places. It needs people of moral courage, willing to join the fight to make the world more habitable and humane. And these qualities have little to do with success as we have defined it. That is a quote that I look at in every piece of work that I do. And I hope that is a quote that every single person on the board, on your board, believes in. Congratulations to Superintendent Leach. I look forward to continuing to partner with you to continue to make sure that this quote is happening in Sequoia Union High School District. I believe if people believe this, then they're willing to say their name because they believe that that everything that they're offering is for everybody. I was hurt when I saw how Ravenswood's data was used in that letter. by an anonymous group of people who never have to show their name, but create so much harm for our students of color. I really hope that it's not just Ravenswood data that is looked at long-term when we talk about making a more equitable, humane, habitable world, but we look at data from all of our feeder districts to see how we can make sure every student is able to succeed in what we define as success. I'm part of a community of practice with your district where we are looking at how we tell our story and how we look at data, and I really hope that we can continue that work together. I really want to make sure that the peacemakers, the healers, the restorers, the storytellers, and lovers of every kind, especially from Ravenswood City School District, those who are marginalized, that their stories get to be told. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kendra Gregg.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, hi, Kendra Gregg. I do not speak anonymously. It's been quite some time since I felt compelled to address the Sequoia board. So glad to be here tonight. I want to speak on the Students First letter. I can't speak to the writer's intentions, but I can just comment on what it reads like. It reads like a faction of parents feel that they're entitled to have their kids in de facto segregated classes. It implies that students' worth and value and potential can be reduced to a single test score. It implies that students' only contribution to a learning community is based on their reading level. And really what it reads like is one group feeling that students from one feeder district do not have the right to occupy the same space as students from other feeder districts because it might somehow diminish their expected experience or opportunities to, quote, race ahead. In regards to detracking, the writers state very clearly that they, quote, don't have confidence that can work in a school like MA, which I think some clarity is needed there. So tonight, I felt compelled to speak because I remember these types of conversations. I remember this type of commentary because it was not that many years ago when I spoke before the Sequoia board in regards to the boundary map changes. I remember community members making claims both in public and anonymously, like things like home values and property taxes and zip codes and test scores should somehow entitle certain populations while denying others. And I just want to say back then, the board, some of the very same people in the room tonight took a courageous step. They made a bold and brave decision to move towards more just and equitable policies. And it's been encouraging in recent years to see that the district has continued to make moves in the direction of equity through initiatives such as detracking classes. And I want to encourage the board to please stay the course. Unfortunately, in an era when seems like the rest of the world and all of us were redefining what success means and what achievement means and what the education system could look like. Sadly, to me, there's always going to be people who cling to a very narrow, very limited viewpoint. Just keep in mind, it is hard work. It can be, it's expected to be uncomfortable. I just ask that the board don't let anyone derail you from that important work. Continue to be courageous and stay the course. Again, not anonymous. If any of the anonymous writers of the letter would like to reach out, feel free to contact me and open a real collaborative dialogue. I'm very proud to be a Ravenswood educator and ready to do the mirror work alongside any other folks who are willing.
Thank you. We will hear next from Alan Sarver. Alan, if you can unmute.
Yes, I'm not used to having to unmute myself. I haven't been on this side of one of the Zoom meetings. I'm Alan Sarver, former trustee, and I would like to begin as well by congratulating Superintendent Leach on her permanent role. Very glad to have you aboard. In response to that letter that is being discussed, I wanted to give some kind of historical perspective as well. The primary focus of this board for the past 15 years that I've been involved, and at least 25 years prior to that, has been closing the achievement gap. It has been a long-standing SUHSD initiative to broaden AP and IB inclusion, strongly encouraging students traditionally excluded from APs to take at least one. Compass and other programs for rising freshmen, increasing, quote, mainstreaming of students traditionally tracked below AP pathways, additional support and language focus, and counseling to include AP classes for targeted populations. All of that work was based on numerous national studies over many years, confirming that tracking is harmful to both underserved and privileged student populations. The results have been significant continuous increases in AP participation, in AP completion, in AP test participation, in AP test passage, in GPA, in graduation rate. The previously excluded demographics have seen significant improvements in all areas. Long privileged demographics have suffered no declines. Research projects and initiatives with expert partners toward detracking were openly discussed in numerous board meetings and highlighted as defining goals of the district. The distinction between rigor and difficulty has been a major focus of the LCAP process over the past 5 years, with broad stakeholder input ensuring that the district would move away from the ways in which the SUHSD Students First group describes AP courses as being too stressful for many students. If the level of content and rigor of the new untracked courses are indeed equivalent to those of the former honors classes, I recommend that the current courses be designated as honors, restoring the cachet, while no longer excluding the low-performing students. Tracking is not the solution. Tracking is the problem.
Thank you, Alan. Our final speaker is Paige Winnicott.
There we go. Good evening, board. Thank you so much, President Ginn, for bringing up both letters actually, and for publishing them, and also for acknowledging the importance of both of the issues, even though they had to be removed from the agenda tonight. My name is Paige Winnicott. I am the co-president of the Menlo Atherton PTA. I also happen to serve on the Los Lomitas Board of Directors. I'm a trustee, but I'm here to speak tonight on behalf of the MAPTA because I was asked. We've had a great deal of interest from parents, not only parents from MA, but parents from the middle school who've asked. They don't ask about tracking. I think everybody would agree that tracking is probably a bad thing. But people are asking, what happened to the classes? Are these classes available? Do you have classes for my child that will challenge that child and be appropriate for them? Is the school going to provide an excellent education for my child? That's what we're hearing. The PTA requests a forum for some kind of discussion. We also would like to see some data to know whether changes that were made a couple of years ago are actually working for everybody. Are they working for the targeted groups that we hope to bring up? Are they working for the groups that maybe would have liked to have taken classes which are now not offered? We need data, but we mostly need a forum for discussion. I was glad to see that this agenda item included letters from both Students First and a letter in response. But I think we need to have some kind of forum, and I don't think a board meeting probably isn't it, but for people to talk and hear and find out about the data that's out there. What's happened? We've had 2 years now of the elimination of AS English 1 and AS Chemistry at MA. is it working? That's the question. Not just anecdotally, but broadly. Let's see. The last thing I'd like to say is the achievement gap that we're trying to fill is not a gap between, certain races. That's the achievement gap that we're trying to fill is bringing everybody up to a level that exceeds standards. And it bothers me that we seem to pit races against each other sometimes when we have these conversations. I think we can reshape this discussion into a meaningful one. And I'd like to see a forum for that. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comments.
Okay, the next item is a information item, 13.1, presentation of the Sequoia Union High School District's 2023 to 2024 initial collective bargaining proposal to the Sequoia District Teachers Association. Mr. Beal.
All right, well, good evening, President Ginn, Superintendent Leach, trustees of the board, and our audience here, both virtually and in person. For those who don't know me, I'm Todd Beal, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, and I'm pleased to be up here to present the district's initial proposal, or also sometimes called the Sunshine Proposal, for negotiations with our SETA Teachers Association. So I'll go through what we have for our proposal, and then, but first of all, I do want to thank Greg and our SDTA for presenting last board meeting on the proposal. And again, thank you very much for doing that. So, pursuant to Government Code Section 3547, the Sequoia Union High School District presents the following 2023-2024 proposal for negotiations regarding the collective bargaining agreements with SDTA. This initial proposal is based upon the district's interest and principles. These interests and principles include maximizing the achievements of all students by providing a quality education so that all students are engaged and prepared to excel in global society, compliance with legal mandates, maintaining a fiscally responsible multi-year budget that includes new legally mandated expenses for increased employer contributions on behalf of employees for STRS and PERS retirement systems, employee step and column increases, increased special education costs, and other increased business and program expenses, and the continued retention and recruitment of quality teachers and staff, and offering comparable total compensation. Yes, I know it's a very long sentence, sorry. So the following are the proposed articles from the district. Number one is Article 11, wages. The district wishes to maintain a total compensation package that is commensurate to that of comparable local districts while maintaining the fiscal stability of the district. Next is Article 6, health and welfare. The district remains committed to providing health and welfare benefit coverage that is to its employees and their families. The district recognizes the cost of health and welfare benefits as an integral part of the total compensation package to be considered in conjunction with salary. The district has an interest in negotiating of a health and welfare benefits package that is commensurate to that of comparable local districts while maintaining the fiscal stability of the district. Article 4, hours. The district has an interest in reviewing and revising the following topics. First, the preparation of time calculations, class meeting time minutes, non-classroom assignments and preparation times, contract cleanup regarding obsolete effective dates, regularly scheduled faculty meetings, next page, 6/5 teaching assignments, and update composition of calendar setting committee and revise section 7.1.1 to match that of section 8.2.1. Next is Article 5 for transfers. The district has an interest in reviewing and clarifying the following article topics: contract cleanup regarding bulletin boards and other ambiguous language, voluntary transfers, and involuntary transfers. Next is Article 7 for leaves. The district has an interest in reviewing and revising the following articles under leaves. Reviewing and revising sections 1.6, 1.8, and 1.9 regarding sick leave and personal necessity usage, and review and revise section 11 regarding sabbatical leaves. The next article, Article 8, is for procedures and evaluations. The district has an interest in reviewing and revising the following articles for evaluation topics. First is the district has an interest in revising and rating to add to meet or unmet and to satisfactory or unsatisfactory. And next, the district has an interest in evaluation forms for non-classroom unit members such as counselors, psychologists, speech and language pathologists, and teachers on special assignments. Next is Article 10, our grievance procedures. The district has an interest in reviewing and revising Article 10 grievance procedures and processes. Next is Article 12, class size. The district has an interest in reviewing and revising the following article for class size and its stipends. Article 13 is partnership peer assistance program. The district has an interest in reviewing and revising articles for the partnership peer assistance program. Next is Article 14, post-retirement employee program. The district has an interest in updating Article 14, Section 1. And finally, Article 17, terms of agreement. The district has an interest in a multi-year agreement term with reopeners on salary and benefits. And finally, I look forward to working collaboratively with our union representatives, with Greg and Edith and their team. So looking forward to coming up as we get our dates set up. So thank you very much.
Have any public comment on this item?
I do have one public comment card.
If anyone in the Zoom audience would like to make a public comment on this item, please raise your Zoom hand now. Okay, let's take the public comment.
Okay, I have a card from Speaker Greg Grzinski, SDTA Bargaining Chair.
Hello, good evening. And like everyone else, I want to congratulate Superintendent Leach on her recent appointment. Very nice thing to hear. So I just wanted to come up. My name is Greg Grzinski. I am a teacher at Woodside High School, and I am the bargaining chair for the Sequoia District Teachers Association. And I just wanted to express my thanks to Todd Beal and to the district staff in putting together this proposal. And thank you for the work that you put in to this proposal. It's a fair amount more detailed than most of the proposals that we have gotten that are sunshined here at the school board meeting. And so just wanted to thank you for the time that you put in, and that we also, as SDTA, look forward to a productive bargaining session and setting up some dates in the very near future so that we can begin with the process of bargaining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have any board member comments or questions? Okay, the next information item is the LCAP Community Engagement Update.
Good evening, members of the board, and most especially good evening, Superintendent Crystal Leach. It makes my heart so very happy to say that. We are going to be giving you this evening the input thus far on our LCAP process for 23-24. So as you know, we are simultaneously putting into place the action items for the LCAP for 22-23 while we are building the LCAP for 23-24. The 23-24 LCAP will be the last LCAP in a 3-year cycle. After that, we start all over again. So I'm about to call up to the podium Diana Wilmot, our Director of Program Evaluation and Research, to present on the community engagement survey findings. And she will be accompanied by Janelle Bugarini, our EL and Literacy Coordinator, and Lily Quiñones, our District Parent Liaison Lead. How do you pronounce your last name? Quiñones, thank you. I have been calling you. Oh, stop. You stop. Lily, you're worth $1 million to talk about the parent engagement that they helped us to achieve. And then after that, I am going to ask from Zoomland the Honorable Mutiu Fagbayi to join us. He will be presenting on our community engagement meetings. You heard a little bit about him earlier this year. He is the president and CEO of Performance Facts. He has national, state, and local level experience helping districts with strategic plans and putting in place goals and actions that are edible and doable. So we're excited. He's working with us this year, and we hope will be helping us to reshape what we bring to you and what you give input on in the 23-24 year. So with no further ado, Diana Wilmot, come on down.
Still no step stool. Okay. Board of Trustees, Superintendent Leach, members of the audience, it's so nice to see you tonight. Congratulations, Crystal. I'm very excited to see you in that leadership role. I am here to present the LCAP community engagement results as far as the survey is concerned. Just a little bit of background on it in terms of how it was put together this year. I worked in conjunction with Student Services, putting together a very comprehensive survey for students, teachers, staff, parents to take once this year, making it an annual survey. And we also worked with Rich Ginn, Trustee Ginn, and the two student representatives on the board to review all of the questions and clear up some of the questions that were confusing from years past. And I went through a whole process of evaluating how each of the questions aligns with our LCAP goals. And so with that, I am going to share some of the results with you and give you a sense of who participated in the survey, how representative it was of our community, and some of the key takeaways that are some of the successes and some of the things that we still need to work on. So let's see, the arrow, there we go. Okay, so first off is our student survey. A little over 5,200 students participated in our survey. I'm going to share with you the representation that exists in this survey. I do want to acknowledge the total enrollment is my kind of reference point for determining whether or not the survey was representative of the student body. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the pie chart of the breakdown of our total enrollment by ethnicity. And on the right side, you'll see the responses by ethnicity. You can see that's kind of a mirror image with Hispanic students being slightly, very slight overrepresentation of our white students, but mostly representative of the entire student body as a whole. You could see the orange being a little bit smaller on the right side, which is 37% instead of 42%. But for the most part, pretty representative. And this kind of comparison is going to happen throughout the presentation, just to give you a sense of whether or not the survey mirrors the representation of our community. Similarly, students who participated across our student survey were from all of the schools. The enrollment is the left side, the responses are the right side. Very slight overrepresentation by students who attend MA, TIDE, and EPA, but mostly, again, representative of the entire student body, as indicated by the students who responded. Similarly, free and reduced lunch population, enrollment on the left side, survey responses on the right, slight overrepresentation by students who do not participate in the free and reduced lunch program, but pretty close. 19.5% is our enrollment and 17% was the responses, but pretty close. So now I'm going to go into the survey and talk about, in each case, the greatest strength and the opportunity. So I dug through this data with student services, human resources, educational services, kind of try to pull out some of the key takeaways that we felt were impactful for our work in the next LCAP. So one of the greatest strengths we saw was that 73% of our students said that they
frequently or almost always have classes with students from different racial, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds, and 22% some say they sometimes do. This is very much in line with our LCAP goal number 2. On the flip side, the greatest area for growth was around, and we did change this question a bit from the years past, so that it was not just about excitement, but just eager to participate. So 9% of students said that they were not at all eager to participate in class. 63% said they were slightly or somewhat eager. And then we have some 5% eager beavers, extremely eager. So this was just an area where we felt that, looking at our LCAP goal number 1 on level of engagement, this was essentially one of those questions that we could really think about in more than just seat time and are they in class, but are they eager to participate in class. When we looked at the parent guardian survey, there's you could see about 2,000 or a little bit more than 2,000 parents that participated. And I'm also going to do the same thing I did last time with the student survey and say, is it representative of our student population? I have to assume, though, that there is one survey per household for this kind of representation, and that was not a guarantee. Parents were allowed to participate, both parents, or if there's more than one child. So it's my best estimate of whether or not it's representative of the community. Again, I'm referencing the enrollment of the students and then the parent survey responses. So there is a slight overrepresentation by parents who indicate their child attends Carmont and MA, as indicated by the light blue and dark blue triangles there in the pie, but mostly representative of the entire parent body, and every school did have an opportunity to participate in this survey. Again, this is another common demographic that we look at is our students' enrollment by IEP. And so there was a slight overrepresentation by parents who indicate their child participates in an individual education plan or an IEP, but mostly representative of the entire parent body. EL status, and this was our 15% of our population, our English learners, our parent survey responses was 9%. I do want to bring up Janelle and Lily to talk about our outreach for our families and some of the ways that we did work to try to improve participation in this parent survey.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Janelle Bagrini, EL coordinator. Nice to meet some of you. I think it's the first time I've seen some of you new board members. But in terms of the work that we were doing with the panorama survey and making it, one of the big things that came up last year that was really hard to access the survey because parents needed to have a code. There was a whole entire process that we needed to train our parent liaisons around to support our families. This time around, it was a lot easier to access the survey. Links were put in school websites and parents just needed to click. One link took them to the survey, then they selected the information that determined what school they were going to, and then it was just much easier to access. Another input from the previous year that we took into account this school year was that sometimes even the translation that was done in Spanish was a lot difficult, like very difficult to understand. Some of the questions were not very clear. You weren't sure what really it was asking. So Diana, Lily, and I took the time to really go through every single question in English and Spanish to make sure it was the question aligned and it made sense. It was like, it's a lot easier to understand both for the parent survey and for the student survey. So we didn't want to complicate it or provide very difficult topics to understand or concepts to understand in the questions that we were trying to get information and feedback from. And additionally, I think we really continue the work that we were doing with our bilingual parent liaisons at each of the school sites, and I'll let Lily talk about that a little bit more.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Congratulations, Superintendent Leach. Very happy for this decision. Yes, so one of the things that we improved this year, I believe, is we provide the parent coordinators and myself, we provide Chromebooks for families and the family centers or offices. So every family will have an opportunity, if they don't have access to the internet or any other devices, that they can come and complete it with us. And all the parent coordinators were available to answer questions over the phone, also to encourage parents to complete the survey, including myself.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to other school years, communication went out in English and Spanish. The school sites also send out phone calls and robocalls to make sure families were completing the information, and just reminders through Canvas and IC for them to complete it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle and Lily. Partnering with you is awesome. And I feel really grateful. The work that they did around the Spanish translations was remarkable. It really, sometimes you get a Google translation and it's just not quite right. So having the experts really understand the context of the questions was wonderful to make it better. And so we're going to go on to talk about the strengths and challenges of the parent survey. 84% of parents said that communication with people from their culture is not a problem. And 3% said it was a large or very large problem. We did dig into the demographics of those 3% to see if it was, kind of more or less one particular group. But it seemed pretty much kind of all over. I mean, not all over, but, just representative of the group at large. Maybe slightly more overrepresented with the free reduced lunch, with the 21 from free and reduced lunch and 41 not, but for the most part, it wasn't one particular group that said it was a very large problem. Nonetheless, this we felt was a pretty important strength, aligning to our equity goal, our LCAP goal number 2, and thinking about how our communication strategies are reaching out to people from various cultures. And the flip side, our greatest area for growth, 14% of parents said they are not at all satisfied with the amount of connection they have with the teachers at school. We took away the question about, do they show up at school? Because we know that high school, parents don't often show up at school, but we did keep the question about staying connected with teachers at school. And we found that 18% are a little bit satisfied and 35% are somewhat satisfied. And there are about 7% of families who have a tremendous amount of communication with teachers at school. So it's kind of, it's just an opportunity to think about how we work and connect between the family and the school and create that community. I'm moving on to the staff surveys now. I'm going to try to move quickly. I've got 3 staff surveys: teachers, school staff, and district staff. We were pretty intentional this year about trying to create the survey for district staff that looked different than school staff because, well, quite frankly, we don't at the district office have as much interaction with students. So some of the questions were not as applicable. So we made sure to pull that out separately. We can see here we have many certificated teachers participating in the staff survey, and they are cutting across all the schools, all the subject areas. And we did the best with HR. Thank you, HR, for getting me the data around whether or not this was representative of our population. So the teaching staff breakdown looks like this in terms of the percent. On the left-hand side is the actual percent of our teaching staff and how they break down across schools. And on the right side is the response of the teachers and how that breaks down across schools. You could see an overrepresentation of the teacher surveys from MA, EPA, tied. But again, mostly representative of the entire teacher population minus Redwood. But there were teachers at each site that did participate. The greatest strength that was shared by the teachers, that they are trusted quite a bit or a tremendous amount to teach what they think is best. This shows how much we believe in the power of our teachers and their abilities, their intellectual stamina to provide students with the right curriculum. And 16% said they were somewhat trusted, and 8% said trusted a little bit, and 1% not at all. And the greatest area for growth was around feedback. So this is in reference to LCAP goal number 5, which is coming up in the next LCAP, talking about human resources. I put it on here and started to have conversations with HR about utilizing some of the survey data to inform their work. And they were excited to have data. So I'm excited to work with them and help them kind of peel apart this data. The 9% of certificated teachers said they get no feedback at all and about their teaching, and 33% said they get a little bit feedback, 37% some feedback, 2% get a tremendous amount. So that is something for us to look at and think about how we provide feedback for teachers. The non-classroom school staff, so these are mostly our classified staff or our certificated administrators or staff on site, but they're not in the classroom. It looks like this in a real world representation with on the left side and the right side being the responses. Again, slight overrepresentation by non-classroom staff who work as classified contractor management and certificated management, but mostly representative of the entire non-classroom staff population. This is where they work. On the left side is where they work, and the right side indicates who actually responded to the survey. A little overrepresentation from MA in the survey and a slight overrepresentation at EPA and Tide. And Woodside was very underrepresented in this particular survey. The greatest strength we found was that 79% of non-classroom school staff said their colleagues showed quite a bit of or tremendous respect to them, giving a sense of their respect in their role at the school. I'm not going to make any interpretations, but the data speaks for itself. This is a reference to LCAP goal number 2 as well, around equity and inclusion from the staff perspective. And this is regarding LCAP goal number 1 around classroom engagement. Actually, no, it says LCAP goal number 5. It's 5, not 1. My apologies. This is around professional development opportunities for our non-classroom school staff. They're looking potentially for more individualized professional development opportunities. 23% of them said they get almost no input into individualizing their professional development opportunities. 9% said they get a tremendous amount of opportunity to create their own professional development opportunities. And my guess is it probably depends on your status in that role for non-classroom school staff. Lastly, this is where I said we did a district staff one. It's a slightly smaller group of people, but slightly different survey since it wasn't as dependent around students being around as much. So this you could see is about 70 so people. And this was very, not as representative, of course, smaller number of people to even access, but it was overrepresented by classified contract, certificated management, and certificated contract. The low numbers of responses may have impacted the percentages. So nonetheless, we're really happy that people participated in these surveys and that everyone is represented in some way. The greatest strength here is 84% of district staff said the work they do is quite meaningful and or extremely meaningful. 13% said it was somewhat meaningful, and no staff felt the work was not meaningful at all, which is great because, at the district office, it can be challenging when you don't see the kids every day, because we know we're all here for the kids, and that's why we do the work we do. When you have folks who work at the district office feel their work is meaningful, it really says a lot about the organization. The greatest area for growth here at the district office was around conversations about race. 26% of district staff said they almost never have important conversations about race, even if it makes them feel uncomfortable. 28% have these conversations once in a while, and 36% sometimes have these conversations. 7% frequently do, and 33% almost always do. This is in reference to LCAP goal number 2 around equity and the work that we are continuing to do. So a few survey takeaways: ongoing focus needed in engaging students to participate eagerly in school. Mutual respect is a greatest strength among staff and students, and both ranked feedback on performance as the district's greatest area for growth. There is a growing need to raise a level of comfort in having important conversations about race. Most staff do feel their work is meaningful, and parents would like to be more connected with their children's teachers. Many staff commented that more time was needed for staff development, and this time needed to be used to collaborate with peers. And all in all, the survey included 7,747 respondents and was representative of the student body, parent community, and staff. So thank you. I will pass the baton to Me Too.
Maybe we could do is see if there's any questions or comments on that and then have a recess.
Okay, Mutiu, I told you you'd be on at about 7 o'clock. I owe you big time. We're gonna take questions from Diana. We're gonna take a brief recess, which I agree we need.
That's fine.
Mutiu, please don't quit, because I really like working with you. Diana, I like working with you too. Answer questions, please.
So I started.
Okay, yeah, I have one comment card.
Okay, so we're gonna first see if there's board comment or question, and then we can, specific to the survey. Does anybody have any questions or comments about it? Go ahead, Carrie.
It's a couple of questions. The response from parents that they want to be more connected to their teachers. I mean, I actually don't like that question in the panorama survey, because I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Really, at high school level, we want the kids to be the advocates, unless they're special ed kids, right? Because I was in one special ed training years ago. For certain kids, then there's more interaction, right, with teachers. So do we need to be doing more parent education? And I also asked this question because our teachers are so busy, right? And we want them, the priority is their time needs to be spent with kids, right? And yes, and then also with each other. So do we need to do more parent ed? Or how do we?
Sorry, just real quick, if maybe one thing that might help answer that question, maybe it won't for this particular one, but I remember there were some constraints when we were looking at the questions, that certain questions were like connected to, I forget what they were, but there were some constraints that certain questions had to be in there for other things. If you can
I think we were limited in some of the questions that we wanted to have some continuity from prior years, and we were getting rid of the question about just coming to the school, like visiting the school. But I think each year we can get better at improving the survey and considering whether or not we need to rephrase the question.
Or does this feedback go back to like Charlene Margot on parent? I mean, although I know she's doing a lot of this, right? Should it be tied also to the parent education work we're doing? Some of the responses.
I'm going to suggest that we bookmark that, and that maybe it would be helpful again for somebody on the board. It was really helpful to have Rich work with us this year on the questions. So if there are themes and things that you would like to see updated for next year, then we can do that. Also, we start a new cycle next year in the LCAP process. I don't think it means we necessarily want to dump all the data we've gotten over the last several years, but it's a good time, I also think, for making some more structural changes.
Okay.
So I'm going to note that.
Okay.
And then Rich is going to tell us who's going to work with us.
Okay. And then one other question, that so many staff members said that they rarely have conversations about race when we've been doing all this equity work. So that doesn't, pardon me?
It was the district office in November when the survey.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. And just regarding that parent question, it was, how satisfied are they with the amount of connection they have with the teachers at school? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about whether or not parents want, I can imagine freshman parents having maybe I could disaggregate it, look at how it is for parents of freshmen versus parents of seniors, and hope to see that the, like the sliding scale, that as the older they get, the more students are advocating for themselves and the parents don't feel the need to be connected. So I can disaggregate the data by grade. And I think that might answer some of our questions about that.
So I just want to say, so I mean, I actually kind of disagree with you, and I kind of do feel like if parents are saying that, I think that is a valid concern. I can say for myself, there probably is a kind of more drop off from middle school to high school, how much you're engaged. And I don't think that's necessarily anything against teachers or what they're doing, but I think it is a valid concern. I think, we do talk sometimes about how we want our district to be more customer friendly. I don't know if that's the right word to say, but, I think it's worth noting, if parents do feel this way, what can we do to make them feel more engaged? Because I think when, we kind of talk about alignment too, when we do get everyone on the same page, we do get parents kind of understanding what's going on in the classroom, I think it makes everyone feel better. The other question I had kind of on a different topic was, so this way you did the survey, is this the panorama? So is that the same panorama that all the students take every year?
Yes.
Well, I mean, so, this is just speaking from my experience as a student, but, I think I've also had conversations of this with Trustee Dubois, but, I think we do kind of wonder sometimes, is this the best way to go about getting data? Because I mean, I know what it's like to be a student, and I know students are always, wanting to fill out these surveys in a way that's accurately representing, what they feel at the time, or if it's simply like, I just want to get this done with, I don't see a point in it. So I wondered if, what if there was any like ideas of how to actually get more student engagement. I mean, maybe Panorama is working well, but I just wondered, speaking from my own experience, I kind of sometimes wondered, like, what's the point of this? I wondered if there was any kind of way we were thinking about to get more student buy-in into this process.
As soon as we figure out how to get more student buy-in on the CASP. I think this is one way for us to get student input, but I think you're completely right. Shawnice asked me, when we're looking at student engagement, how are we going to drill down on that? And she didn't say this, but that's an area for growth for us every single time. And so I think in areas where we see trends, that we probably need to start doing things like student focus groups, student panels, so that we are getting kids in more organic settings or more personal settings to get further input. But we're also open to other suggestions.
No, completely. And I was just curious, so how many questions would a student have to answer in the survey? Because I mean, I kind of forgot how many questions I answered, but I feel like it was
so this year, it was actually a little longer than it had been in the past, because we did it 2 different times last year. We did one on SEL and one on LCAP, and this year we combined it. And one thing we asked everybody to do is do it in class, so that it wasn't something they had to do on their own time in a voluntary way. So I think that's one of the reasons why we have as great of response rate as we do. I think it did take a good 30 minutes to do the questions.
Wow. I'm so.
Or it was.
I apologize. My microphone was on when I said that was long, so I'm sorry.
It was long. It was long. I agree. It was long. So it was a toss between. Yeah, it was long. It was good, but it was
I
also.
didn't mean that. I didn't mean for you to comment. I just didn't know my microphone was on when I said that, so I apologize.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the other choice was do it twice. And we felt like doing it once would be kind of the biggest bang for our buck if we did it during class once, and just minimize any disruption to instructional time.
All right, so I have a couple of questions on this. One, that the survey is long, and I, as a person who's working on a community assessment project in the community, some communities and cultures don't want to fill out anything that's too long. And what I hear from young people when they fill out of a survey, I've been asking questions about kids' data and all kinds of stuff to get some confirmation from youth about what they need. And they have said over and over to me, we don't really fill those surveys out. We just fill it out. We don't really like always tell the truth, or we're rushing through it. So sometimes getting more accurate information, the more information. And I know you have your standards and the feds and all that kind of stuff. So I hold that here, knowing that that is like the regulation. But I also want to say that young people don't always fill the survey out so that it's accurate data. And so I want us to think about like, I'm doing a community assessment around African-American youth, and we are only asking questions that we actually use, like, and helping them to understand that these are really important, or setting the tone around how important their voices are. So I know that you do some of this, Bonnie, but that's like the first thing that comes to mind.
So I want to honor what you're saying and believe you when students say that they're not taking it too seriously and it's super long. It's a catch-22. One of the things that Diana did this year was we had great input on the panorama survey last year, as we always do. And I think we burnt the bejeebers out of our constituents. So then when it was time to take the mandated Healthy Kids survey, which is super long and you have to ask all the questions, they got hardly any responses. And we wanted to acknowledge that many board members are very concerned about mental health. So we wanted to get you great results on mental health. And Diana said, I'll work with them and I will combine the surveys. So it's, I don't know what to do with that feedback.
I know. That's why I said I hold this here. But I also am trying to like hear students who say that. But I am happy but I'm happy you did it in class. At least they don't have to do it on their own time. So I think the other question that I had, let me get my phone out. I had it written out. There were some results that you had shared that I had questions about. And Bonnie, I know you sent me some stuff. It wouldn't open for me for some reason. But there was one of the questions. Is it still there? I think it's in, I don't know what slide it's on, but it says strengthening the sense of belong. No, hold on. Wrong one. Sorry. It was about being eager, participation in the classroom. And the data was kind of low. They're not as, am I correct? Did I read that? Can you share more about that? Because I actually would love to dig deeper into that area.
Sure.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Bonnie? Okay.
Yeah, the question about eager to participate, it was a student response. It was the area for growth that we referenced. And, we obviously, we plowed through a lot of questions asking students. And we're just sharing with you the two questions that we think are the most powerful. Maybe we see the same ones year after year, maybe we'll just ask those ones going forward. Yeah. So this, again, I could disaggregate this, more by any which way we want, to look at if it's, a grade, particular grades are more eager to participate than other grades, or particular students from, depending on their participation in different classes and what they're eager to participate. This is just an overall general based on the 5,200 responses. There were 9% of students that were not at all eager to participate, and 20% who were slightly eager.
I guess in my mind, that question is actually pretty interesting. I think it's a reflection of what the teacher wants, more feedback. And the people who give feedback is the students, with parameters, of course. And I wonder if we dig down in that area, if we ever have time. I think it could give us some ideas around strategies, around what works for students, especially if we break it down into kids with different needs. And what does that look like in the classroom to really hear the voices of students? I hear teachers always saying they want to hear more. They get excited about coming to school to teach, not for the adults, but for the kids. And so I wonder what would happen if we elevate those voices, because I think that would be worth it. I think that would be really, really worth it. The second thing that I wanted to dovetail on is what Sathik has said about parents not feeling connected to their teacher. I think there is this, when we think of brain development, and brains not really being developed till they're 25 years old. And so as a person who had a freshman who was not functioning like a complete freshman and having to be up at school a lot, I think there is something to say about folding in how much parent engagement needs to happen or parents being connected in that freshman year. I hear it from, even when I was part of the MA Foundation and being, because that's the school I went to, so I can't talk about all the other schools, so it's not me being biased, but that's the school where my kids went for 7 years with my 3 kids. But what I heard from parents who were like me, who were on that board, who were not from my community, that freshman year is really difficult because it's a shock going to MA because it feels like it feels like a mini college. I think a lot of our comprehensive schools feel that way. So how do we phase in that like how much parents should be involved? At what level do they start calling the teacher? Do they wait for the kid whose brain not quite developed to advocate for themselves when they really don't want to? Like all that kind of stuff. Or better yet, they just don't want to be seen. They want to do what they want to do, right? So like, what do we do about that? I think it's something for us to kind of think about from a developmental perspective for brain development as well as parents. And I know for myself, I understood after MA was like, please let your kid do it, right? I'm like, okay. But like almost having a visual of like, this is what engagement looks like. And as they get older, this is what it looks like. And you decrease and they increase. But it sometimes feel that freshman year, sometimes even that sophomore year, that parents are cut off and really given that message that you cannot advocate for your kids need to do it themselves. And so there is kind of a tension there with brain development. So I wanted to dovetail on that. And I thought about what Carrie talked about, that, you know, some kids we were looking to have kids more advocate for themselves, and sometimes with kids with IEPs, maybe not so. I think it just depends on how the severity of the IEP. There are some students who we're just working on life skills with, and so they may not always have their voice together, but we want kids, regardless of where they are with the severity of their needs, to be able to advocate for themselves through a person-centered approach, which is based in disabilities, which means we're giving kids their voice, and then they're able to challenge, and then they're able to take it out. And I kind of think about my own kids as they're older now. It might be because I was like this, but anyhow, but they're starting to give more feedback to people, and they're learning to use their voice through the system. And I think if they don't practice that, regardless of what their needs are, they don't know how to use it when they go out into the world where it's not so voice friendly. So I've just been thinking a lot about how we should be with our students so that they get the skills that they need once they go out into career and college and whatever choices that they have after high school. So those are my 2 cents.
Amy, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I had 2 questions. One related to what were the results from last year's survey, where the areas of growth and strength similar, and if we were targeting certain things from last year, you know, did we improve, or how are we tracking from year to year? And then the second question is related to what kind of evaluations are in place right now for teachers, just so we have a better understanding.
Sure. So we see the same themes over the years. For a long time, our greatest area for growth has been student engagement. I would say it looks like that's improving, partly because we've broken apart that question and we're showing somewhat eager. In the past, we only showed the very low and the very high in the results. But I would say that's still, according to the survey, our greatest area for growth. And the work happening around that is a lot of work on student engagement in the classroom, particularly in the areas of student voice and student dialogue and rich talk. But I agree that we could use some student focus groups and some student panels to talk to us more about those areas and what they would find to be most helpful. We did it during the pandemic, specifically to the pandemic, but we haven't done it on this topic since. And then staff consistently says a greatest need that they have is more collaboration time. And those are the two areas that I see come up and that they need, that their feedback on their, on how they're doing at their work, is traditionally, an area for growth for us as well. And then Todd, I don't know if you want to say anything about evaluation process. We're coming to you, really.
Yeah, just shortly, the evaluation process is identified in the collective bargaining agreement. There is a multiple step process that goes through it. It depends whether or not you are a probationary teacher or if you're a tenure teacher. A probationary teacher, you're evaluated more often within the 2-year time frame before you're considered or could be considered a tenure teacher. There are other areas for like a self-evaluation teachers can choose. Others that have been in their tenure profession for a certain length of time, they can look at with an agreement with their administrator to kind of a broader range of evaluation. So instead of doing it once every 2 years, maybe it's once every 5 years or so, but it has to be based on their previous evaluations and how well they do. So there's multiple levels to an evaluation depending if they're probationary or tenured.
I guess a follow-on question, are there any informal evaluations or feedback versus the formal?
Well, they have the formal, they have the observations, and after the observations, they can come in and have conversations with their administration. Administration should follow up with them in writing as well with their observations. There could also just be discussions with the teachers or the staff in general for participation and help. What we also have, which I'm very proud to partner with, what we have with our SDTA is our, you heard before about our partnership peer association or assistance program. That is another
Sorry, you
way.
spoke too fast.
Oh, sure. Our
Assistance.
partnership peer assistance program.
Oh, okay.
That is, sorry about that. I know it can fly through really quickly. But that's another way in which, in terms of providing support for our teachers, it's a great opportunity for them either as veteran teachers within our school district to partner with coaches as a way to assist in their progression and their skills.
Can I ask one more question? It's not of you, Todd, sorry. Not like that. Thank you, Todd. The question I have is there on the survey question, it says, when you broke it down for schools, it says confidentiality protected. It said the parent survey participation, it was slide number. No, it doesn't have the number. Hold on, I don't know what number it is. So it was. Is it 12? Hold on. I don't know what that means. Oh, okay. It was on, I'm trying to figure out, oh,
Maybe
slide 10.
Maybe they just didn't choose a school.
Slide
And
10.
so they're just confidential, like they left it off, they left it blank.
Oh, okay, okay, so it's nothing like about that, okay.
No.
And then my last question, we didn't do any students that are at Gateway, do we do those, do they fill out the survey? So no, they're not considered, they're considered outside of our, okay, gotcha. And then the last thing is, I know that we work with our liaisons that are Spanish speaking, and thank you so much to getting the surveys out. But I know we have a parent, a Tongan parent liaison. Were we able to get Pacific Islanders families out to fill out the survey? Do you know? I'm looking at Lily, not saying you need to know everything, but.
Because when it comes to the Spanish speaking parents, we have to try to help them break through the question.
Use the mic. If you can use the mic, please.
Sorry. So, yeah, she was part of this training, and I'm sure she reported back that she was able to help families with the survey. Yes.
All righty, thank you.
Quickly, actual last thing, I just thought of this, but I might be mixing up surveys, but if I remember correctly, when I took the survey, there were two questions. One was, there was a question at the end where you could give write feedback, basically anything. I was curious if do we look through those, or are there a lot of responses, or?
There is a place for open-ended responses that we need to kind of call through and word cloud and do some qualitative analysis, and we have not had a chance to do that yet.
Because I think that's something that
It is very valuable.
be curious, yeah, because I guess someone who took the time to write something might have feedback. I guess the other question, I think there was also a question where you list out people you would consider were close to or friends, right? Or is that another survey? Really? Because I thought it was there before COVID.
Is it the maybe it's the California
maybe
Healthy
that-
Kids survey? Yeah. No, no. The California Healthy Kids survey is still given to 9th grade and 11th grade right? Is it every year? Yeah, so but what we did is we combined forces with student services because they had an SEL survey that was separate from the LCAP survey. So we smushed those two together, and so that we weren't asking kids the same question more than once. And we were able to ask some mental health screeners earlier in the year because this was in November.
So if you were in 9th grade, you'd be taking 3 surveys, except 2 of them were combined. Now 2.
This year, 2 surveys.
Okay.
In the past, 3.
All right. Thank you so much.
Any other board members have comments, questions? So I just have one sort of procedural type question. We had 2 trustees speak about like parent relationship and specific ideas. We didn't get to kind of a consensus on anything. There's sort of 2 ways that parents could be more satisfied. One would be that something more happens. The other would be that their expectations would be different. Like in either way, you could be more satisfied. Like what's the right role for the parents in a student of that age and of each of the ages. And I don't know what would be, there's sort of the setting strategic direction and then setting the right metrics. What would be like is this something that we should somehow revisit in a future board meeting or something about like perhaps there's a second question, but I'm just sort of, it sounds like we had some amount of differing of opinions on like what's the right question, what's the right thing to try to
Level of
measure,
involvement, yeah.
right? What's the right amount? Like what's for someone who's 17 or 18 years old, how involved should their parents be in their classrooms, et cetera? So I'm sort of asking a procedural question. We didn't get to anything that I would call guidance here, but it sounds like there was some what should we do for next steps?
So one thing I could do is I could look a little deeper into the open-ended responses, just to see if I pull out extract any other additional data from the parents' perspective. I think that we might glean something. And we could look at, you mentioned Charlene Margot, and just kind of getting a sense of how much of the parent project and the parent curriculum focused on parent engagement in schools. And I can chat with her a little bit about that to see how she measures that. And maybe just relook at the questions again when we administer this next year.
Yeah, there's somewhat the question themselves, and the other is what is our goal?
Expectation?
Yeah, what is it that we want? Prior to the questions, when would you be working on developing the next survey? Like roughly what month?
Summer.
So it's something that sometime before the end of the academic year, we need to, if we were going to. So if we were going to have any sort of board, if we were going to do anything with it, we would have to do it before June because they're doing the survey in the summer.
You create this, can you talk about, again, when you create the survey for next year, correct?
Yeah, so Janelle has a thought.
I'm passing it along. Also one thing to consider is that our parents do take the survey earlier in the school year. They complete the survey in November. And so like if we were to ask them now, I wonder how much more they feel they have been involved throughout, maybe at the end of the semester grades, and then through the spring semester, much more involvement may happen, but just to consider that the timeline of the survey.
I think it would also be important to disaggregate the data a little bit further to see if we can get the age groups for that. But then I also, I wrote down that I would be interested in asking that same question to teachers to see what they measure the parent involvement, to see if they're close or different.
That is a great question. And I think when we kind of pare down the number of questions that are really of most interest to us, asking them on all the surveys, the same questions, so that we can look at how all the respondents respond to the same kind of question will also help really move our system forward.
Okay, thanks so much. We need to take a little.
We do have one public comment.
Oh, sorry. Yep, we should take the public comment prior. Yep, sorry.
Okay, Abby Corman.
Sorry, everyone. I do need to use the restroom myself, so I'll be happy for that break. As I've said publicly before, I do believe in our LCAP goals and I'm proud of them. I believe moving toward on-the-ground action beyond work by management and meetings will help our district students immensely. I look forward to hearing our steps towards this work. Tonight, we heard about community engagement for the LCAP, and I appreciate the effort that went into this, the reflection and changes from years past, and that there was an increase in responses. I also appreciate the comments I just heard from Trustee Stevenson and Trustee Nori, they brought up pushing us to find ways to have students and stakeholders engage more deeply. My comments are similar. As I've said before, in fact, at our last meeting, we cannot be satisfied with the current feedback levels that we have from our community, as while we may say that they're statistically representative, I must continue to argue we need to be hearing more from our community and from more of our community. I think we heard about 7,000 respondents when my best estimate of full stakeholder responses would have been over 20,000. I especially appreciated hearing all that Janelle and Lily did and the work that the single bilingual parent liaisons at each site did. I wonder what changes in community engagement we might see with more funding to these parent liaison positions. I also want to applaud the effort Janelle, Diana, and Lily did to make sure our survey was translated well. Thank you. I'd love us to always put that effort in. Does our district rely on Google Translate heavily? Do we not have a position that ensures all of our translations are accurate? I do not know, but I'm afraid after hearing this presentation that this work falls on bilingual staff who do not get any additional stipend for having this skill and are therefore asked to do things that their monolingual colleagues are never asked to do. I wonder how much time and effort this took to get even this much engagement, which, while statistically representative, was less than a 50% response rate. I also wonder if it is or could be someone's job to streamline the communication and requests of surveys we expect our family, students, and other stakeholders to participate in so that our feedback is meaningful. Currently, I believe only some students and community members feel as if their voice matters in this district, and we need to figure out a way to address that. Skipping ahead, I agree with President Jin that a review of our communication procedures would be a valuable future agenda item. I think a step back view of tonight's meeting shows that our community is not feeling heard or reached out to in ways that make them feel connected. I look forward to us trying new practices to engage our community members by more deeply funding needed on-the-ground positions to do the work with parents such as bilingual site liaisons as we work to regain trust and be better. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll take a recess. We'll return at 8:55 Apple time. Okay, that concludes our recess, and we are going to continue with the information item.
All right, Mutiu, are you still there?
Very much so.
There you are, Mutiu. Thank you so much for being with us. If
Thanks
you
for
would just
having
let
me.
me know when you want me to forward the slides, I am going to turn this portion of the evening over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all again. Some of you I've met before. I want to start by saying hello to President Jean, and also, can you hear me so far, Bonnie?
You sound great.
Okay. And to the other trustees as well. I look forward to meeting all of you and working with you. And I want to congratulate our new superintendent. Also, it's nice to get on the call tonight and hear other folks congratulating you. So I look forward to working with you. It's been a pleasure so far, the 2 or 3 times we've worked together.
Thank you.
And I also have to give a shout out to Bonnie, who's just been just really terrific in bringing me and my team up to speed and been a great thought partner in this process. So I usually like to start every meeting we do by putting our position in perspective, and we call ourselves facilitators. That a facilitator is a guide. A guide does not command or control, but a guide does direct, leaving it up to our partners or our clients to choose to follow along. So what we see as our role is guiding your school system towards whatever you define as your bliss. So the process of developing a plan, it's one of you can think of that as articulating what bliss, BLISS, might look like for the district. But I want to ask your indulgence a little bit as I just kind of broad walk, as I've listened the last couple of hours. There's one idea from a very well-known document that has been on my mind for the last couple of hours as I've listened to the conversation. And that document is the preamble to the Constitution. It talks about we the people, and what we the people want is to build a more perfect union. It doesn't say to build a perfect union, it says a more perfect union, which is a recognition that at any given point, what we have in place might not live up to the ideals we have in mind. It also, that one word more in front of perfect also is about continuous improvement. It's also about, at least for me, it tells me that there's better, that things could be better than they are right now, so that when we run into what seems to be difficult times, as reflected in some of the comments this evening about the tracking or detracking, that we ought not give up on the ideals or the big ideas that we share. We want to hang on to them and then figure out, we have to work together to figure out how to make them work for everyone. In fact, in the name of your district, the word union is part of it also. So we want, the work is not always going to go in a straight line. It won't always be pretty, but we can build a more perfect union if we continue to believe in the ideals or the ideas that form the basis for having a union high school district in the first place. There are just so many different ways that preamble, the part of the preamble came to mind for me this evening as I listened to your presentation. So what I've been asked to do tonight is to give a very brief update of the work that we've done so far. Three scheduled conversations, 2 of them completed around feedback from stakeholders. And that too is work in progress. It can be more perfect, and we can talk some more about how to make that happen. But I want to start with a few slides just to set the context for the 4 or 5 slides on what we learned. And the first slide is one on the screen, a profile of our students. It's a very diverse school district. Out of every 20 students, roughly 8 are Hispanic, Latino, roughly 8 out of every 20 are white students. Then with a splattering of other races and ethnicities. So we do have the racial ethnic diversity. On the next slide, we also show other ways of thinking about our students in terms of the programs or special supports they qualify for. So out of every 20 students, about 3 students with disabilities, roughly the same number, or the same proportion as students whose first language is not English, and about 30%, 6 out of every 20 of our students come from homes classified as low income. Next slide, please. Okay, so back again to the more perfect union, and really picking up on the union piece. This is the slide of why as a district, and it's a very powerful statement. I mean, really powerful statement that why is to produce consistent excellence in outcomes for all students, regardless of their background and circumstances. That's how I read that. And that's work in progress. And the way out, the easy, lazy way out, is to try to amend that or get a workaround. That's the easy, lazy, not so energizing way out. The tougher way, but the one that I believe is ultimately more satisfying, is for us to figure out how to make the why a reality. That's the real work that we want to do. And how well are we doing so far? Well, this chart shows a snapshot of where our students are. Much of the data is expressed in terms of out of every 20 students, and then we just colorize to get a feel for where we are. So we're looking at a snapshot based on performance on state tests in language arts and math, engagement in schooling, as measured by a proxy like attendance and suspension rates, performance on coursework, showing how many ninth graders have at least 60 credits, which might be an indication of them being on track to graduate within 4 years. What percentage complete A to G courses, and how many are taking and passing at least one AP or IB course before graduating, and so on. We can look at the specific details later on, but it's quite obvious that for some of our students, back again to the why, they're doing pretty well. Well, for some of our students, they're not doing as well yet. And this is not new news. It's just to reinforce really the very positive idea that you have as a school system, you've got a very strong statement about why. Earlier tonight, some people described those in terms of closing the achievement gap. We're not there yet. We're not there yet, but we don't want to give up on being there, or we don't want to be looking for, a quick way out. So the LCAP planning process, it's really about alignment. How do we get all the arrows going in the same direction towards a shared set of values and goals? The arrows could be people, there could be processes, there could be programs and structures. But even if you were to ask a 4-year-old, which of those 2 circles will likely give more pleasant results, they would tell you it's one on the right. And so as our approach to planning, then we suggest that the primary aim of planning is unity of purpose or alignment. And we can go to the next slide. And we cannot have that alignment without embracing diverse voices of all of our stakeholders. The survey results we just saw a few moments ago gives us a clue as to where each of those different groups are. And the few slides that I have to share with you just make the same point. If we want to get all students home, again, back to the more perfect union, we have to keep working on ways to get those diverse voices. How do we get more types of parents who traditionally we haven't been able to reach? How do we get the students on board? And next slide, please. So the sessions we've had so far, there are 3 of them. The first one was, I think, was the PAC that was held on the 24th at the district office. We had one Zoom session about a month and a half ago, and then we scheduled one just this past week on the 16th at EPAA. So what I'm going to show you are highlights of the key findings from what we could make out. On the next slide are the 6 LCAP goals, what we brought to the conversation with the participants was to have them reflect on where we are on the 6 goals, what's working well in each one of those areas, what needs improvement, and what suggestions do they have for improving our probability of success on each one of these 6 goals. So in terms of what's working well, 3 main categories of things that are working well, and you will see some of these also under what needs improvement, again, in the spirit of building a more perfect union. I was quite pleased to hear many parents talk about the attendance system much better than it used to be. They're pleased with the increased attention on attendance, the follow-up with students who are truant or chronically absent, and that the district's approach to addressing attendance problems is more integrated, more focused than it's been in the past. On services and programs, especially from non-English speaking parents who are very pleased with the improvements in translation services, that some of the changes that have taken place at the school site level have sort of leveled the playing field, different programs of support and services that seem to make access to college much easier and much more approachable for many students and families. And then around teaching and learning, you see both sides of this piece. The course restructuring, some felt was positive. The detracking of the freshman classes also fell in that category. And more than one set of participants talked about teachers being very helpful to their students. So, 3 broad categories. Around what needs improvement, 3 categories here also. The students were actually advocating for more teachers, especially. They talk about insufficient adult capacity to connect students to resources and the need for additional creative ways to get students to school. Flip side of the attendance positive comment made early on. There were some comments around open campus. Again, positive and things that need work. How can we make sure we address the challenges posed by an open campus without the students feeling like it, without having to wall them in, one more time. And then around teaching and learning, flip side, the concern about heterogeneous classes, teaching practices in some detrack classrooms. Okay, no surprise that we're not all on the same page about what that means yet. And then finally finding staff to offer more CTE courses. I think that's one more slide, yes. In terms of access for English learners, I think most of the comments will be what you would expect. Transition, having information about transition to college, transition through the college process, having school meetings that are focused on how to help and support Spanish-speaking families, not just on budget, and making it easier for parents and families to have support for their ELL children. And several points around transition, making them smoother and simpler, strengthen the sense of belonging for youth and students, especially those who've been formerly incarcerated or who are foster youth or in foster care, and then the transition from high school again to post-secondary options. And then the final section, again, this is the continuation of the transition point. Then in terms of suggestions for improvement, next slide, please. Just 3 broad areas. Professional learning for teachers regarding differentiation, so that they can better meet the diverse needs of their diverse populations, more meaningful metrics of student learning beyond just test scores, and then having more opportunities for CTE participation. On programs and services, less class time, more people time. How do we take the teaching and learning beyond the classroom? Empowering student government and student voice, more counselors again, and then personalized learning pathways for students. And then on the transition side, it's really about connection beyond the school walls, career fairs, job shadowing, speaker series, and so on. And I think we have one more slide. Maybe that's the last one. Yeah. So, overall, as you probably will have predicted, there are several things that are going well, and some of the things that are going well can be better improved, or they're not as well as they could be yet. And although the participant size have been small, we have about Bonnie had about 10 more scheduled, 10 more listening sessions.
Yes, we've got about 10 more constituent groups who will be giving us input.
Okay. So that's where the process stands. Now, again, only 3 have been held so far. The story has been, it's holding well, but we have to continue to figure out how to get more authentic feedback from all the participants. Once we have all that in, then the exercise that comes next on the planning for the LCAP plan itself will be in 2 phases. We think about all this as just input into a very focused conversation about what can we glean from these constituent conversations, and how do we incorporate that or integrate them where they seem applicable into the plan for the 23-24 school year. And then next school year, we can also talk about the LCAP plan for the next three-year cycle that starts in 24-25. I'd be more than happy to take your questions now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board, would you prefer to see if there's public comment first, or do we have any public comment, Laura? If anyone in Zoom attendance would like to comment, can you please raise your Zoom hand now? Okay, seeing none. Laura, is there none in the room? Okay.
There.
Okay.
Okay. We have one on Zoom, Caroline Coleman.
Sorry, there's a slight delay. I just wanted to say this is really encouraging. I really appreciate you taking the time to share this. It makes me feel really good about shifting, pivoting, and hopeful. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, any board members have any comment? Okay, go ahead.
First of all, it's nice to meet you virtually.
Thank you.
And I wanted to say something stood out to me on one of the slides, when you, I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. You talked about a more perfect union. I think coming off this meeting today with various pieces to it that's beyond your presentation, there's something that you said. Thank you, Laura. It's all in my mouth, but anyhow, I lost my thoughts now. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the STEM. I really appreciate that. There was something on one of the slides that I thought was like inspirational and aspirational for us, which is diverse voices aligned to a unified direction. That said it all for me. I know, I'm supposed to comment on the PowerPoint that I'm trying to find on my computer now. But I thought that was pretty insightful to put on there. I know we're getting more feedback, but this really sounds like some of the emails that we've been getting. So it's not unusual, some of the information. And yeah, I'm interested in knowing more about a couple of things. One of the things I know I asked you, Bonnie, challenges and opportunities posed by open campus. This is kids going out for lunch.
Yeah.
And people don't want it. Oh, they don't come back.
I'm sure they want it.
I'm like, what's the challenge? They don't come back? Is that the challenge?
Some don't, and then there's some wondering, or they don't come back on time. A couple of parents also expressed concern about safety,
Okay,
that when they walk around during the school day.
okay.
But they like the idea of the the freedom or the options kids have versus having them walled in. And again, just haven't quite figured out the right balance. That was my read of where that comment came from. That was the very first meeting.
Okay. And
Bonnie,
then-
what was your take?
Bonnie, did you want to say anything?
I had the same take you did.
Okay. And then my other question is additional creative ways to get students to school. Is transportation an issue? Is that what that means?
No, it means what can we do to incentivize, motivate, inspire some of our students who are less frequent attenders to be more frequent attenders.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
for school attendance, in one sense, you can think of it as the student voting with their feet. If it's the kind of place that really engages them and inspires them, they will come. If it doesn't, and they get a better offer from somebody else, they're likely to take that offer, which could be things that happen outside of school.
Students vote with their feet.
Yeah.
And so there is a message there. Thank you. I
Absolutely.
think those were the only two things because I wasn't quite clear. I forgot to ask you prior to. But yeah, this is very good information. I can't wait to hear more.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes the information item.
Oh, I had one.
Oh, sorry, Amy,
one
didn't know.
question.
Go ahead.
Because I saw on, I guess it's slide 45, there was what needs improvement was better understanding by adults of students' aspirations, sense of purpose, and passions as a bridge to connect students to learning. So I think that ties in very well with the student engagement piece. But I was wondering, did that get translated to personalized learning pathways for students on the following page in terms of suggestions for improvement? Or how did you transition from those opportunities or what needs improvement into suggestions?
Yeah, the connection you made, it's really very powerful. I didn't pick that up before, but there's definitely a through line that can be run from, the suggestion for something more passionate, more exciting for kids, and then something much more highly personalized. I don't recall whether those came from the same person, but they definitely connected. Yeah.
So the suggestions for improvement was still a summary coming out of the community engagement, but it may not have been the same person.
That's correct. Yeah, with the 5 or 6 pages we shared about what needs improvement, we've tried at this stage in the process to be as close to what people said. We haven't interpreted it much. There's not a large enough information base on which to make general sweeping statements. But so most of those really came from as close to verbatim as we could get at this point.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Matiu. Sweet
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Look forward to working with you. And Crystal, congratulations again.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Okay, the next item is approval of the 2022-2023 second interim report.
So we do have Christine Gong with us tonight. She is the Director of Business Services, also known as the District's Controller.
Thank you, Superintendent Leach. Good evening, everyone. So tonight I will be presenting an overview of our second interim financial report. Our district is required to submit 2 interim financial reports to the County Office of Ed. The second interim budget report reflects actuals through January 31st and projections through June. You can see this. So this slide here is it's a second interim at a glance with numbers for our revenues and expense and our projected ending fund balance. But I want to talk about here. So this is a worksheet comparing our first interim to second interim. Our total change in fund balance increased by $21 million right here. And that is from a $5 million increase in revenue right here. The majority of the increase was in our property tax, and that's due to transferring less of our property tax to our charter schools because of their declining enrollment. And also another big increase was the state revenue. That's for the transportation funds. Part of the requirement of receiving the transportation funds is the board approving a plan, which is included in tonight's agenda. On the expenditure side, the close to $16 million decrease was aligning our salaries and benefits with position controlled and some our unfilled vacancies, and also adjusting the art, music block grant and our learning recovery emergency funds. Since the board has not approved an expenditure plan, hasn't approved an expenditure plan, the funds were taken out of our second interim budget. And also we were deferred some of the educator effectiveness expenditures to the out years. So that what makes up the $21 million from second interim to first interim. This is a chart showing our multi-year projection for revenue. You can see that in the out years, it's decreasing, and I will talk about that after I show you the chart on the expenditures. This is a chart that shows that a majority of our funding comes from our property tax, and 12% comes from our state tax. 7% is federal and 7% is our local funding. Local funding meaning interest income, our donations, our foundation money, and our rentals and leases. And 4% comes from our federal funds. This chart shows our expenditures for other multi-year, and as you can see in 22, 24, and the out years that our expenditures are decreasing. So let's talk about our revenue. On the revenue for our multi-year, you can see that our revenue is decreasing in 23-24. It's because of the expiration of the one-time funds in our federal and state revenue. And also we don't budget in any one-time donations in our local revenue. On the expenditure side, total expenditures are also decreasing because positions and supplies and services that are funded from one-time dollars are not included in the out years. But as you can see, for the current year and the 2 out years, our unrestricted budget has a surplus. So we anticipate having a surplus for 3 years. In terms of our other funds, we are projecting to have a positive ending fund balance. And I welcome the board to ask any questions if they have any questions about our second interim.
Okay. Like, you have a question?
Oh, I was just gonna move approval, but. if
But
anyone-
first, we'll see if there's any comments or questions.
So I just had a question about the local funding. I think you mentioned that donations are not included. So what is included in the local funding?
Interest income, rentals and leases, and some of the foundation money that funds some of our positions.
So then donations is actually separate from foundation money then?
Correct, because sometimes it's one time.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
I guess I kind of had a more general question. So I know the district did get a lot of one-time funds during COVID. So I guess going forward, how certain are we that our financial outlook is good without access to these one-time funds? Like, is that a concern at all that the money that we had or how we spent it? I'm just curious about that.
If you look at our multi-year projection, on the unrestricted side, which is this column, we're showing a surplus, so we're not deficit spending. So for the next 3 years, we're showing a surplus, so the district is not deficit spending, but increasing the fund balance.
Maybe just a connected question. Can you talk about the assumptions between the 2022-23 83 million total expenditures, and then that it'll be 71 million in the 23-24 for the restricted funding? What are the assumptions that lead to that difference in the expenditures between those two periods?
Are you talking about the 229
The
compared to
83 million and the 71 million. 83, the restricted funds in 22-23 and the restricted funds in 23-24. It looks like there's an assumption of roughly $12 million less restricted expenses. And I'm just wondering if you know where that, how.
Oh, that's because we're not funding any of the one-time positions in the out years.
Does that? How many people are currently working in one-time positions?
I don't have that information currently in hand, but I can get it to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other discussion? Motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Thank you. Do we need a roll call, Laura? Okay, all in favor of approval? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks so much. Nice to meet you by Zoom. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And next, we have approval of the Sequoia Union High School District Transportation Plan.
Go ahead, Christine.
Thanks, Laura. Per Assembly Bill 181, the home to school transportation reimbursement, like I mentioned before, in order to qualify for the state transportation funding, the board must approve the district's transportation plan. The transportation plan outlines the current services provided for students who do not reside within walking distance of our school, as well as transportation services for students who are experiencing homelessness, students with disabilities, and students participating in the Tinsley Transfer Program. The state funds us 60% of our prior year transportation expenditures, less our LCFF transportation add-on. So our entitlement for next year is $2.7 million.
Okay, let's go topic and then Shawnee's go topic.
Yeah, so I read this and I just had a quick question about section 5. So I'm kind of curious, like, why is it just Tinsley students who get transportation if they go to another school, or is it all students, or is it the result of the settlement of the original lawsuit?
That's the result of the settlement from the lawsuit.
I guess my question is about the Tinsley. So we have students that go across the 8 districts for Tinsley, or some of them, not all of them. I'm not for sure. I think most.
It's
of
not
them.
all of them, yeah.
Yeah, but the ones who end up going to Palo Alto, that's one thing. So how does that transportation look for us? Is it because they chose like their feeder school as Carmont because they were in a certain Tinsley school? Is that what I'm thinking?
Yes, then we would transport to Carmont.
Okay, so if they were in the Tinsley program and they were on Belmont Redwood Shores and they choose Carmont, even though they're in East Palo Alto or Bellhaven, we provide the transportation to get to those schools. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
You might not know the answer to this. I'm just curious, is that a significant number? Like, do a significant number of Tinsley students stay, or do most of them end up going back to MA?
I don't have that information.
I thought years ago that feeder districts did their own transportation and then they contracted it out to Sequoia Union, correct? Did they pay us back for that?
Some do, yes, and we do have
Some
MOUs
do.
for the ones that we currently provide transportation for.
Wait, so some don't pay us back, or some do? it
No,
themselves?
they've just reduced the amount of need. If they use our transportation services, they do pay us for it.
Okay, motion to approve.
So-
To the chair, we have one public comment.
Oh, thank you.
From Abby Corman.
Hi, I think maybe I've misinterpreted this, but I'm still eager to have this comment because I was thrilled to see transportation on the agenda because this is an issue I've been concerned about for quite some time, especially after my transition from working at Sequoia to Menlo Atherton. I thought at first, and I had in here to ask, are we looking into increasing transportation services or doing a review of them? And because I hoped for both. All I can currently offer is anecdotes from my class where I have shared with you data. Some of my students, they're not graduating, but they are also tardy and they're frequently absent from the intensive and intervention courses. I make it a purpose to welcome students saying, I'm so glad you're here, no matter what time they arrive when they're tardy. And reaching out to absent students, telling them that they were missed and asking them if they're okay. I often hear of outside life experiences that are severe and significant and make sense that they're missing school that day. Using this relational pedagogy and coming from a place of curiosity, I've also learned that many of my students walk in the mornings to Menlo Atherton from EPA. It takes about an hour, sometimes in the rain. Some of my students pay for Ubers to school. Some of my students share that they're late because the 296 and other Samtrans buses send the small bus instead of the larger double bus. And so they have to wait for the next one because they don't want to push their way onto a crowded bus and risk safety concerns. In multiple parent meetings, I've heard parents share that they won't let their students take the public bus because they don't feel it's safe. But they also don't feel like biking is safe over the freeway. But they're not home to drive their students to school. I'm wondering if we can look into data about safety and transportation if this is not something we were already planning on doing. How many students feel unsafe getting to school and back home again? How many students have faced violence or threats going to and from school? Is part of our chronic absenteeism because we're not transporting our students safely into our classrooms? Ask us to look more deeply at this because it troubles me almost every time I reach out to a student and hear legitimate concerns for why they could not attend that day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from board members? Motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 That concludes the items on tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
A second?
Okay, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good night.